One of the reasons why I love you is you have been a expert on the brain and a psychiatrist for 40 years, and you do not focus on what's wrong with us. You literally teach us how to bring out like more awesomeness through brain health. You call it elite brain training. What is that?
Well, a long time ago, I realized I hated the term mental illness. It shames people, it's stigmatizing, and it's wrong. There are brain health issues. And if I can teach you to get your brain healthy, well, your mind is better. People often don't understand that. Your brain, physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And so if you want to be elite, you're already elite. But the people I work with, everybody wants to be better. Nobody wants to be told they're mental. And so the mission I have on the planet is to end the whole concept of mental illness and create this revolution in brain health, which is why I'm so grateful to hang out with you today.
Oh, I wasn't planning on asking you this, but I just was struck by the fact that you distinguished between the brain and the mind. What's the difference between your brain and your mind?
Well, your brain, the physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And people get this mixed up all the time, but you just have to think of someone who has Alzheimer's disease. And if you saw the scans of people with Alzheimer's disease, you see that they're wildly damaged. And then that person is no longer fully that person because their brain has been damaged. Or just take COVID.
Mm-hmm.
People who get COVID in the next 4 months have a 25% chance of having a new onset psychiatric illness because COVID causes inflammation in the brain. And then I was on the Kardashian show recently, and Kendall came to see me, and she's like, after I got COVID, I'm so anxious. But if you look at the physical functioning of her brain, her emotional centers are on fire. And so people really need to know, if you want a healthy mind, the first thing to have is a healthy brain.
And when you say a healthy brain, so that makes sense to me, Dr. N, first of all, especially the Alzheimer's example. It makes sense to me that when the physical structure and functioning of your brain is impacted, of course it has an impact on the state of your mind. And so are you saying that absolutely anybody can improve the physical health of their brain, and that will have an impact on your happiness, your performance, and your mental health?
Everything. And it happens quickly. So for example, if you get better sleep tonight, your mind can be better tomorrow. If you get drunk tonight, your mind's going to be worse tomorrow. And because those both have a direct impact on the physical functioning of your brain.
Wow. It's interesting because you're right. There is so much information and so many conversations out there about mental health, but you have this revolutionary approach of teaching all of us how to take better care of our brain and how to improve our brain itself and how that has a direct impact. So I want to start at the very beginning because, you've been doing this for 40 years. You are, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on the brain. And can you give us just a 101 on the brain and what you want anybody and everybody to know about the brain? And I want you to speak directly, Dr. Amen, to somebody who may be listening who's never thought about this topic before.
So your brain is involved in everything you do, how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. It's the organ of intelligence, character, and every single decision you make. And when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled for whatever reason, you're sadder, sicker, poorer, because your decisions aren't as good. And the very first step in getting a healthy brain is developing a concept I call brain envy. I always say Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. I haven't seen it once in 40 years. It's brain envy is what you want. You want to love the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. You know, today I'm in Miami, but I usually live in Newport Beach, where we have more plastic surgeons than almost anywhere in the world, because people care more about their faces, their breasts, their bellies, and their butts than they do their brain. And that's insane, because it's your brain that makes you attractive. It's your brain that makes you happy. It's your brain that keeps you purposeful, or it's your brain that is the organ of rage. And so getting your brain right is critical. And it's these 3 steps: brain envy, got to care, avoid anything that hurts it, know the list. And quite frankly, most second graders would get a 90% if you gave them 100 things that hurt their brain. And then the third thing is regularly do things that help it. And I worked with BJ Fogg for 6 months. He runs a persuasive tech lab at Stanford on how people change. And we develop tiny habits. You know, what's the smallest thing you can do today that will make the biggest difference? And the mother tiny habit is, whenever you go to do something today, ask yourself, takes 3 seconds. Ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love of yourself, love of your family, love of your mission, you're going to just start making better decisions, because you care about the organ that makes you you.
Wow. All right, let me unpack this. So number 1, brain envy is this idea of actually caring about the health of your brain. And so do you recommend that you have somebody in mind that you envy? Like, clearly I envy you because you take incredible care of your brain. But is it just this concept that you just actually have to wake up and realize that what's in between your ears is the most important aspect of your health and wellness, period? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And number 2, you then said that there are these micro habits that you have developed, one of which is asking yourself literally throughout the day, is this good or bad for my brain? So let me just role play that one real quick. Because you said that, like 90% of second graders can answer the question correctly almost all of the time, but we adults get it terribly wrong. So let's just say it's breakfast time. So how do you use this to start to make better choices that help your brain? Like, do you literally go, okay, am I having a cup of coffee or a glass of water? Am I eating like a big piece of toast with tons of butter and all this crap on it? Am I taking my supplements? Like, how does this play out in somebody's day-to-day life, Dr. Amen?
So I used to play a game with my daughter when she was little. Her name is Chloe. And we called it Chloe's game. And I would say blueberries. And she would say 2 thumbs up, God's candy. And then I would say Frosted Flakes. She'd go, way too much sugar. Or avocados, 2 thumbs up, God's butter. Or hitting a soccer ball with your head. And she would just roll her eyes like, brain is soft, skull is hard. That would be so stupid. and so if you think of the standard American diet, sad, almost everything's bad for your brain. From the toast in the morning, to the sugar cereals, to the donuts, to the pastries, to the coffee with sugar and milk in it. it's no, those things are not great for the health of your brain. But if you did intermittent fasting and you sort of skip breakfast, well, that's good for your brain.
Why is that? Why is intermittent fasting good for the brain?
Because it helps your brain clean up the trash that builds up from the day before. There's a term called autophagy, which is cells start to eat the extra trash that built up the day before. And so if you don't sleep, you don't have enough time for the cleaning crew to come and sort of clean up your brain. Intermittent fasting gives you a little bit more time to do that. So breakfast is marketing, and it's actually not essential. Now, for people who might have hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, then breakfast really is important. And kids who have ADD, for example, if they have protein in the morning, their medication lasts longer throughout the day. And when you and I were growing up, things like sausage and eggs were common for breakfast, where now, because everybody's on the run, it's sugar-laden cereals, juice. That was the only thing the second graders got wrong when I tested them. So I gave them a list of 20 things, and I'm like, good for your brain or bad for it. And the only thing they got wrong was orange juice, which they put in the good category, but it's clearly in the bad category, because when is it rational to have the sugar from 4 oranges? It's not rational.
That's true. It makes a lot of sense. What are 3 micro habits that have the biggest impact on the health of your brain, other than asking yourself, is this good or bad for my brain?
So I start every day with today is going to be a great day. Because once you get the physical functioning of your brain healthy, you then have to program it. And so I knew I was going to talk to you. It's the first thing that came up in my mind. So I start every day. And if you have children, it's really good to do this at breakfast, which is if you have breakfast. So why is today going to be a great day for you? Directing your mind, which for many people, because of evolution, they wake up in a negative state. It puts your brain in a positive state. And then my favorite of all the habits I do is when I go to bed at night, I say a prayer, and then I go, what went well today? And I go on a treasure hunt. And I actually start from the very moment I woke up, looking for what was right about the day. And I've done this now 7 or 8 years. And even the night my dad died about 2.5 years ago, and it was an awful, awful day. I did it because it was my habit, right? The brain is lazy. It does what you nudge it to do. And so it really helped me even in a really hard time. But it's almost my favorite time of the day because, like you, I'm busy and great things will happen and I'll just not really focus on it. But it's that treasure hunt that is just so good. And then I take my supplements every day because we live in a nutrient deficient society. And I always want to give my brain the nutrition it needs so it can serve me rather than derail me.
Is there one supplement that you believe everybody should take for better brain health?
Well, a couple, multiple vitamin, a really high quality multiple vitamin. I make one called Neurovite Plus. Brand new study showed people with memory problems who were headed to darkness when they took a high quality multiple vitamin, within a matter of months, their memory was better. So,
what? Yes. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. So you're saying that a high quality multivitamin can not only improve your memory, but if you're sliding on a slippery slope toward memory loss, research shows that it can actually bring memory back?
Yes, brand new research just came out. They're actually comparing it to placebo and cocoa extract, chocolate. And they were hoping the chocolate would do it. It wasn't the chocolate, it was the multiple vitamin. And why I developed Neurobite like I did, it has the same dosages of B6, B12, and folate that decrease the conversion of mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. Now, I never make a disease claim with supplements, but if this level of B6, B12, and folate did that, I'm going to put those levels in our supplements.
Wow, I'm going to start popping it like candy is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that we link to that study and then we link to the supplements that you make as well, just so that people can check it out. That's incredible. So a multivitamin has a huge impact. I hear a lot about fish oil too.
And that would be number 2. I did a study at Amen Clinics and we found 98% of people had suboptimal levels of omega-3 fatty acids unless they were supplementing, because we don't have the same level of fish consumption we had before. Plus, fish is tricky. Brand new study out of Florida International University, so not very far from where I am today. They looked at bonefish off the coast of Florida. On average, they had 7 pharmaceutical medications in their tissues. And I'm like, no way. And the most common were antidepressants. So as humans, excrete the medications they take into, waste plants, that gets out into the ocean. And then the fish we eat are impacted by them in a negative way. Whoa. So one reason I like high quality fish oil, because it's purified, especially ours, but also omega-3 fatty acids have been found to be good for your heart, good for your brain, good for your hair, good for your skin, good for your eyes.
Why is it good for the brain?
25% of the nerve cell membranes in your brain are made up of omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're deficient, your brain is not going to work as fast and efficiently as it could. And low levels have been associated with all sorts of bad things, from depression to dementia to ADHD.
I want to go into some of the other, chemicals that you hear associated with the brain, and have you explain to us what they are and why they're important for happiness, for brain health. Let's talk about serotonin. What is it and why is it important?
Serotonin is hugely important for many different functions in the brain, but for happiness, for flexibility, and respect. And respect's the ones that fools people. But when your serotonin levels are low, you more easily feel disrespected. And if you have a social fight, or you feel diminished in some way, your serotonin levels drop. And when serotonin levels go low, people tend to worry. They get stuck on negative thoughts, negative behaviors. They tend to be argumentative and oppositional. And if things don't go their way, they get upset, which on the surface can appear selfish, but it's really not selfish, it's rigid. And boosting serotonin with like bright light therapy, which is why it's so important to get sunshine. And while, as we go into the holidays, time change happens just at the wrong time, right? As we get less sunlight and it gets colder outside, we just, then got a bomb dropped on us. Like all of a sudden you lose an hour a day of light. And light is so important.
let me back us up a second. So does your brain create serotonin? Is that what is the function of serotonin in the brain?
So your gut makes about 90% of the serotonin in your body,
Hmm.
but it doesn't go directly into your brain. Your brain creates serotonin from the amino acid precursor called tryptophan. And that's why often eating tryptophan rich foods,
Like turkey.
um, can be helpful, but not in a ketogenic way. You have to eat tryptophan rich foods with a carbohydrate because you need an insulin response to drive tryptophan into the brain. So turkey and sweet potatoes together is a great combination to boost your mood.
So when you have high levels of serotonin, how does that impact you?
You tend to be happy. You're a little bit less motivated. You sort of don't care that much. I remember when Prozac first came on to the market, and I would give it to some of my depressed patients, and they would say they would be less depressed, but also less motivated. Because as tryptophan goes up, dopamine, another chemical we should talk about, goes down. They have this sort of counterbalancing effect, which is why, and this is really interesting for anyone who grew up in an alcoholic home. I studied children and grandchildren of alcoholics. They often have low levels of both serotonin and dopamine. And so if I just raise one, I make them better in some ways, but worse in other ways. So a lot of people who take SSRIs, they go, well, I'm happier, but I don't really care that much. I had one guy tell me he wasn't doing his taxes, and he's like, no, this is going to be a problem. So I had to rebalance his medication.
So is serotonin sort of the happiness one and dopamine is the motivation and drive one? Is that their relationship?
Well, they're both. You think of both of them involved in happiness. And dopamine is the molecule of more. It's when you get dopamine, you go, oh, I like that. And the problem is the more you get, the more you want. And then it turns into trouble. We are wearing out our dopamine centers in the brain in our society with our phones and social media and the nonstop video games and texting. We're being thrilled to death, which ultimately wears out the pleasure centers in the brain. So you have to be very careful. I often talk to people about drip dopamine. Don't dump it.
What does that mean? Drip dopamine, don't dump it.
So you want little tiny little tiny bursts of dopamine, not a big splash. So for example, cocaine, big splash of dopamine and you go, whoa. But the problem is you have none left and then you get depressed, which you then start using. Alcohol is the same way. Alcohol dumps dopamine. Nicotine, vaping dumps dopamine. Scary movies dump dopamine. Falling in love dumps dopamine. You want to drip it, holding Tana's hand, getting eye contact, looking for what I call the micro moments of happiness. So much more important. And new love is totally dumping dopamine. So you always, whenever you just fall in love, you need to whoa, this is really awesome. Let me ride this out before I make any big decisions.
So would an example of dripping dopamine include the two micro habits you talked about? One being waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to make it a great day. How am I going to do that? And also at the end of the day, going on that treasure hunt for what went right?
Yes.
Excellent. How can you tell if you have low dopamine?
If you're tired, if you find that you're unmotivated, if you're sad, and you just don't have the motivation to get done what you want to get done. And, I'm in Justin Bieber's docuseries Seasons, and, I've been his doctor for a long time, and they just wore that boy's dopamine centers out. And then, when you become famous like that, you have access to women, to drugs, to video games, and just completely, almost killed that boy. And they deadened his pleasure centers. But the good news is, even if you've been bad to your brain, by doing the right things, your brain, we call it neuroplastic, it can be better, even in a matter of months.
Wow. We've talked about supplements. We've talked about some micro habits. What are 3 simple ways to increase dopamine?
Cold showers will do it. So I just took a shower before I did it, and I always finish with like 2 minutes. I turn it all the way cold, because cold therapy has been shown to increase both norepinephrine, another neurotransmitter, and dopamine. Eating tyrosine-rich foods. So we talked about tryptophan, the amino acid building block for serotonin. Tyrosine is the amino acid building block for dopamine. So things like almonds and eggs and beans and fish and chicken, dark chocolate. But you don't want to do that with an insulin response or with a carbohydrate. And so this is where a higher protein, lower carbohydrate diet can be helpful. Exercise also does it, and certain supplements like tyrosine. So tyrosine is a supplement, and it's the amino acid building block for dopamine.
So is there any like certain times of day where your dopamine is higher or lower just naturally?
In the morning.
And is the same true with serotonin?
In the evening.
Okay. So to explain that to us, and then how we can use something natural to boost it.
So everybody's circadian rhythm, or the rhythm of their energy, is different. There are morning larks and night owls, and you sort of have to know what you are. A lot of my ADD patients are night owls, and society is sort of biased against them, because school starts early, work starts early for a lot of people. But you just have to know your rhythm. And if your dopamine is high in the morning, that's when you want to focus and get work done. If it tends to be higher later in the day, know your rhythm. Serotonin often helps people sleep. And in our supplement, Put Me to Sleep, we actually have 5-HTP, which is the amino acid precursor, even closer to serotonin than tryptophan. And for a lot of people, it helps decrease worry and promote sleep.
Wow. I'm like slightly overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start in terms of like how to boost my serotonin naturally, how to boost my dopamine naturally. So is there a way to simplify this? Like, you just kind of talked about your circadian rhythm and understanding if you're a night owl or you're a morning person. So if you're a morning person and you kind of wake up and you're naturally more motivated, are there certain things you should do first thing in the morning to keep your dopamine levels high, to stay focused, to promote your brain health?
So one thing I really like, especially as we start into, later fall and winter, is morning bright light.
Okay.
And so people who have seasonal affective disorder, so winter blues, that morning bright light therapy, and you can actually get these therapy lamps. I make one called our Bright Minds therapy lamp, 10,000 lux. So it's bright.
Okay.
Don't look at it, put it like an arm's length away from you while you're putting on your makeup or having breakfast, if you have breakfast, for 20 or 30 minutes in the morning. super simple, can significantly improve dopamine, your energy, mood, and cognitive function. Exercise, whether you want to increase serotonin or dopamine, it does both. Walk like you're late for 45 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week. Super simple, bright light, exercise, just incredibly helpful. And this is very important. I just turned 68 this year. And it's very clear to me that the stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease. But it's really, for older people, it's frailty that kills them almost more than anything else. So light, exercise, simple supplements, and now you can eat in certain ways to boost the neurotransmitters in your brain.
So when you say frailty and strength, are you also recommending, in addition to the 30 to 40 minutes of walking as if you're late 3 or 4 times a week, that you also add in strength training?
You bet. I think it's absolutely critical for men and for women. Your muscles are your protein reserve. So one of my young doctors went to Hawaii on vacation and got this terrible infection that almost killed him.
Oh, wow.
And the reason he didn't die is he was strong when he went into that illness and had the protein reserve muscle on his body. And yeah, no, I remember the day when in the hospital, I expected I was going to get a call. He died in the middle of the night because he just got this wicked infection from jumping into a natural pool in Hawaii. But he survived and he's done great because it's the protein reserve or the brain reserve you bring into an illness or an accident that determines how you're going to do after it. I mean, you've probably, seen, one person gets into a car accident and they come out of it just fine. Another one's permanently damaged. Same accident. Why? Because it's the level of brain health or brain reserve they brought into the accident that often determines the outcome. So every single day of your life, from my perspective, every single day of your life, you should be boosting your brain reserve.
For people that are brand new to the idea of healing, of trauma, of nervous system dysregulation, by asking you a question. Do you believe that the majority of breakdowns or mental health issues that we face as adults go back to the issue of stress, trauma, hypervigilance that you experienced during childhood?
I absolutely. And that also is to include, however, the structural brain neurological changes. This is where we can, I think, as a field, get caught in a little bit of the chicken or the egg, because stress does imprint on us biologically, genetically. A lot of us do then see or born with even structural changes, right, in our brain, imbalances in neurotransmitters. Again, the field is still, the psychology field that is, and the medical field, if I'm being perfectly honest, is still learning, is still evolving, is still growing. And it took until, within the past decade for us to realize that one of the number one things, I'm sure maybe some listeners have heard of, neurotransmitters, right? This idea that when you're diagnosed with a mental illness, whatever it might be, your neurotransmitters are off. You're a hormone in your body that impacts our mood. While that is absolutely part of the story, for a very long time, we located the neurotransmitter production and maintenance, right, in our brain. And now we understand that it isn't just our brain that creates and produces and uses neurotransmitters. It is our gut, right? So now we have another whole part of the body that is impacted by decisions that we're making, food we're eating, pollutants that are in, toxins that are in the food that we're eating, habits around eating the food that, again, were passed through generation. So to simply answer your question, we can't localize it to just one exact factor, in my opinion, which is why I'm such a proponent. And I've shifted the way that I work and think and practice and teach into a more holistic model, because it's all of it. And the reality of it is there are structural changes. There are imbalances in our nervous system. There's dysregulation in our nervous system and imbalances in our neurotransmitter, I should say, that are creating then the symptoms that are, resulting in diagnoses. And my hope is to take the whole picture into account and to give people the opportunity to explore the deeper underlying causes, because that's the area where we can begin to intervene by making new choices, by creating a different internal environment for ourselves, by creating a different external environment for us to live into, can then help us resolve some of those longstanding symptoms.
So I'm going to give you a personal example, okay? Because I think it will help people start to process where we're going to go with this conversation by thinking about this example. And I will be the emotionally immature parent in the example, okay? So we have a daughter who has just started to talk openly about the fact that she feels very stuck in life. In her words, that she does not feel alive, that there are very few experiences happening in her day-to-day life where she feels truly alive. And the other thing, and this is sort of a little joke, is that we say, we love you because you don't take yourself that seriously. She's really, really funny. But you take everything else so seriously. So she is the typical hypervigilant, on top of everything, stressed out, got to get everything right. And when I apply your work to this situation, knowing that she's talking to a therapist, I say that as her mother, when she was born, I had severe postpartum depression. I had an incredibly traumatic birth, and I was, in your words, emotionally immature, which means I personally, as a new mom and just as a human being at the age of 29 or 30, I could not handle my emotions. I screamed, I vented, I, was very unpredictable. And on top of it, for the first 8 weeks of her life, because the postpartum depression was so severe, Dr. Nicole, and I was so heavily medicated because it was a dangerous situation psychologically and physically for me, I couldn't take care of her. And she has, now that she's an adult and in therapy, and she just did, some really interesting guided psychedelic therapies, has had now a memory of that period of her life as an infant and really being in distress, wanting me to come. And just remembering my husband coming and one of our close friends that would sit with me while my husband was at work while I was very sick. And she also has had this sort of experience in therapy of realizing that I really wanted to be there. But that core experience very much cemented a kind of experience of the world for her. And I, of course, was just passing down the lineage of stressed out, volatile, intense, not that warm kind of behavior that I grew up around. When I look all the way through my lineage of, immigrant working in coal mines, domestic servants, farmers, like work, hard work. And I look at her, and as, she's talking about a job and she's talking about doing this, and I'm thinking, actually, this is about you healing. I hate to say it this way, so please correct me, but I feel like the damage I fucking did to you because I didn't know any better.
Yeah, I want to commend a couple things here, Mel. First, your honesty in sharing these experiences, and also the environment that you've since created. It sounds like, to the extent that your daughter is able to right, begin to share these realities, these conscious awarenesses that she's having, because that is a gift to be able to communicate honestly with those closest to us, especially those that might have been a participant in whatever the circumstances that we lived in our past, in our earliest life. That is such a gift, because few families, I think, have at any time. And I know my family in particular, now we're just recently starting to be able to share things with each other in honesty, share what our different realities, I have two other siblings, are, and allow that to be the case. So that is absolutely something to celebrate. And the reality of it is, when we don't have the resources to take care of ourselves, and when we're stuck in this dysregulation that we're talking about in our nervous system, we're stuck in a survival mode in and of itself of our own. And so my heart, I actually felt myself welling up in emotion hearing you share that story, for not only your daughter, for you as well. Like you were sharing the awareness that she had of you wanting, right, to be present. And I think postpartum depression is one of those rarely talked about experiences that is so, I think a lot of times it's highlighted on how it is for the child of that disconnection, though, how painful it is for the parent who in their heart, wants to be. And I think this is the case with all of us, as with all parents, is there's a lot of well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals that are of two minds within themselves, if they're even aware of it or not, of wanting to show up in whatever way, and attuned and connect it in a loving way, oftentimes wanting to reverse patterns that they know didn't serve them from their own childhood, yet not being able to, because the reality, and I use the term survival mode to really highlight the reality that when we're in survival mode, and this is all just driven by our nervous system, so it's not anything logical, our survival is our priority, which means that a child, a loved one, a partner, right, isn't where our attention and our resources need to be allocated at that moment. It's quite literally in us getting through the next few moments of life. And this might sound dire, which is why, again, I'm just offering that this is all driven by our ability to survive, by our evolution as a human. So this is, again, where we are of two minds, where we might desperately want to show up, to connect, to be attuned to our child, and our body might not be prioritizing that child at all. It might be prioritizing us and our survival and us making it through the next moment, however difficult that moment is. And so again, I just want to, thank you for your honesty in shining the light on a topic as this, because I've spoken and worked with, in my past practice, a lot of women who were so shameful about the experience of having, that deep rooted depression, even of, this is another controversial, I think, thing to admit, of maybe being of two minds about how it is to actually be a mother. Right? There might be a very well-intentioned part that does want to show up and does want to be in care of a child. And the reality of needing to be in care of someone else for 24 hours a day is very difficult. It's very challenging. And there might be then conflicts in and of itself. So again, I want to commend you for your honesty. And I want to commend the environment that's being created in your home where these things can be talked about. Because I think the more we're able to, again, be non-judgmentally honest with ourselves and with other people, to relieve ourselves, like you're even sharing. When I look back in time, I see the same patterns, just like I experienced with my mom. When I look back at her family experience, it's cold, it's disconnection. She literally had a father who came home from work. He was the financial support of the household, put up his newspaper, and quite literally ignored the children. So it's not surprising that the mother then emotionally that I, was born into, didn't have the tools to emotionally connect, no matter how much she wanted to do different, and knew that that was a painful experience for herself. She was locked in her own survival mode and was just simply unable to.
Yeah, I agree. And and in sharing the story, it actually is somewhat liberating for me, because I don't want to pass down that generational cycle or trauma of being in survival mode and having a conflicted relationship with giving and receiving love. And what I can so profoundly see is that since I'm catching this in myself at 47, and I'm still working on it, my kids probably, I'd say at least 6 or 7 times a week go, "Watch your tone, Mom. Watch your tone of voice." For me is when my emotional immaturity kicks in, when my inability to tolerate something. Mel Robbins is now her 8-year-old self because her tone of voice goes nasty, just like I heard in my household the tone of voice in the adults around me go nasty when I was 8 years old. And so I want to make it very clear as a takeaway for people that if you are resonating with this idea of, being in breakdown or feeling stuck or feeling disconnected in your adult life, first of all, we all go through it. If not a couple times, right? A couple big breakdowns everyone goes through. So it's normal, but it's not, it's good news because you're awakening that your current way of living on autopilot or being shut down, or in the words of my daughter, not feeling alive, that's not how you're wired or meant to live. And so this moment of consciousness is an opportunity. And I will also highlight that through my own example, the first place I want you to look is I want you to look at Dr. Nicole's work, because what she's saying is the first place to look is in your childhood and how you have gotten to a point as an adult where your ability to tolerate discomfort emotionally is no longer serving the kind of life you want to live. And I'm willing to say, through experiences I did not mean to create for my daughter, I taught her hypervigilance. Like, she had to become the adult. I wasn't even able to be present. And I feel terrible about that. Do I wish I could go back and wave a magic wand? Absolutely. And I know for both of us, there's this huge opening present for both of our healing, not to mention our ability to have a mature, loving relationship on our own terms versus being in a relationship that is driven by the patterns of our lineage and what we were taught when we were children. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I'm shaking my head very ravenously over here because, I think it's important for me to state as well is I still have moments where for me, my reactivity comes out as passive aggressive, snarky, underhanded comments where I'm not able to directly say it is how I feel to another person. Again, because without that attunement in childhood, without that safety, I learned the act of suppressing it, of going away on my spaceship and not ever saying what was really wrong. I also have a habit of disconnecting from my loved ones, my relationships, of literally going and walling myself off in my bedroom and then holding them responsible for not coming in and not being connected and not supporting me when I need it. And I like to use this visual of it. It's as if I have my hand held out in front of me and I'm demanding, sometimes even with daggers on the end of it, and then demanding someone come and give me a hug. And again, all of this for me, you said something really beautiful that I think is important to touch on. All of this goes back to, for me, the inability to be emotionally connected, to give and receive love in my childhood. And as counterintuitive as that sounds, especially for all of us in relationship, many of us, few of us, I should say, in adulthood, actually have had that lived experience of giving and receiving love for being who we are, for just sharing how it is for us, what we think, what we feel with another individual. So while we might, and this was so much, of my life for so long, all I desperately wanted was to be connected. I would leave partners because you weren't able to connect with me. I didn't feel close to you. And it took until, the awakening that began in my 30s, my early 30s, because it was several years of time before I was able to see myself as holding those daggers out, see all of the ways I was disconnected from my own authentic emotions, not sharing them with other people. So how am I going to be deeply and authentically known to someone else? I never gave anyone the opportunity because for me, it felt so scary, so vulnerable, so threatening that having those daggers out and blaming you for not coming closer was that safe zone. It was just a replication of that early experience, again, that was created in my household with all of my family members, but namely around my own mom, who wasn't equipped, didn't understand, probably had a deep-rooted desire, like I was sharing earlier, to be emotionally connected, but didn't know how herself.
Yeah. I mean, we only can do what we've been trained to do until we wake the hell up and heal ourselves and teach ourselves to do something different. How do you know if you're getting enough sleep based on the things that you study?
Yes.
Because you hear 8 hours.
Yeah. How many hours do you sleep, by the way?
The older I get, the more boring I am. So I would say 9 or 10.
Yeah, I love that. People who sleep less than 6 hours have higher mortality. They have lower mood, and they are hungrier, as we said, with the leptin.
Huh.
What you want to do is really to realize how much sleep you need is when you sleep without an alarm. How many hours do you sleep? And not when you're sleep deprived, but
I bet I sleep 10 hours.
yeah,
If I don't have an alarm on, I sleep way longer than I think I'm going to.
when you look at the last couple of weeks of your life,
Yes.
the best days, the when you felt the most refreshed, the best mood,
Or were the days I got the highest amount of sleep.
that's
By
how
far.
much, that's how much sleep you need. And every American that's listening to this is going to be like, I can't sleep that much. But you think about your best days of your life happened when you slept adequately. It changes your hunger hormones. It changes your hormones in general, for women, especially as we get older. This is important. It changes your mood. It changes your ability to make decisions
Yeah.
and your interactions with other people. So why would you want to skimp on that? Why would you say that you'll be like everybody else, sleep when you're dead? When you look at the data says opposite. It says if you don't sleep, you'll be dead much earlier.
That's true.
If you don't sleep, you will be more depressed, more anxious, have more hunger and craving signals. You are going to be a version of yourself that is a shell of what you want to be.
So one final thing that I think would be extremely helpful to people. Let's assume that we went to bed early and we wake up and we get a good night's sleep. Can you walk us through what you would recommend the eating routine, or what is on our plate and when are we actually eating?
Okay.
For
Mel,
complete hormone balance.
Yes. Okay. So as you know, everybody is different and
Yep.
their life circumstances are different. Every time I do this, people say, oh, but I work night shift or
Right.
I have little kids. I get it. Like I had many years where I didn't get enough sleep, where I didn't get enough sunlight, where I couldn't make the best decisions because I was just so pulled in, all the different directions.
Uh-huh.
So I get it. But we didn't even talk about circadian rhythms. But Mel, sunlight and darkness run our bodies. We have internal clocks in every one of our cells. So routines are excessively important
Okay.
in terms of our mood and our body, our nutrition. So when you wake up in the morning, you want to get sunlight. I have a rule that I learned from someone online. Basically, I did this for a few days and I felt the best I've ever felt. And I'll tell you what it is. When you wake up, instead of scrolling your phone,
Yep.
checking your messages and your emails, go get sunlight first. Sky before screens.
Oh, I love that.
So sky before screens is how you should start your day. Your body is wired to see sunlight in the morning, even if it's a cloudy day. It just has to be bright light.
Okay.
You can just walk outside. For me, it's my back door. Just walk out for a few minutes. It could be 2 to 10 minutes. You could do, for me, I'm usually just in my pajamas. So I'm coming back in and getting ready for the day.
Okay.
So you don't want to have food or caffeine in the first 45 minutes of your day.
Why?
I'll tell you why. When you wake up, you feel groggy, right?
Yep.
That grogginess is mostly from adenosine in your brain.
Adenosine. Okay.
And it clears out, as you know, within 30, 40 minutes, it clears out. Then you have your coffee. Then you eat your food. And the reason why is coffee, the way it works, it blocks our adenosine receptor. So that means that It doesn't help get rid of the adenosine. It just blocks it from actually binding.
Okay.
So if you don't let the adenosine clear out and you just drink your coffee, when the coffee wears off in a couple of hours, that adenosine's still there. And it just binds those
Oh.
receptors and you feel excessively tired.
And that's why you think you need another cup of coffee.
And then you're fully dependent, like the people that wake up and they need the coffee right then, and then they need it again at like 10 o'clock, and then they need it again at 1 o'clock. It's because you're not letting that adenosine
Whoa.
go.
Okay.
You need to let that clear out.
I'm guilty of this. So
Yes.
I am going to try this tomorrow. I am going to absolutely have my coffee and then, oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to wait 45 minutes. Then I'm going to have my coffee. I'm going to see if I have a craving for a second cup.
Yes.
That is fascinating. Okay.
So you want to let it clear out naturally, because it's not going to clear out naturally if you start the caffeine cycle right away.
Got
okay?
it. So clear it out for 45 minutes. Get our son in. What's next?
Eat.
Okay.
So
No intermittent fasting.
everybody, I love intermittent fasting
Then why are we eating?
because I do it the opposite way.
Talk to me.
There's very good evidence that for thousands of years, we ate in one scheduled way,
Okay.
which is daylight hours.
Oh.
There was no microwaves, Uber Eats, they had a fire and you'd maybe eat an hour or two after sundown. That's it, right?
Yep.
You are not snacking at midnight. There's nowhere to store the food thousands of years ago. Our internal clocks are set so that when melatonin hits 2 to 3 hours before bed, your organs shut down.
Mm.
You cannot process sugar as well as you did. You can't take it into your muscles. You are not you're not releasing digestive enzymes. So basically, when you're eating late at night, you're waking your body up in the middle of the night and asking it to do a math problem. Your body is going to be like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to make mistakes.
Yep.
You wake up and you're tired and you're pissed that someone woke you up in the middle of the night. That's what happens when you eat late at night.
Holy smokes. You put your body in conflict with itself.
Yeah, and so intermittent fasting, everyone's doing it the wrong way. They're eating way late into the night, and then they don't eat all day when the sun is out, right? Like that's the time that your body's ready for food, right? So ideally, you wait an hour because nobody needs to be eating every minute of every day.
Yep.
Americans we just eat 14 to 16 hours a day. It's just too much, right? So you wake up, maybe you get some movement in, you get your sunlight, you eat about an hour or two even after you wake up. You don't
Okay.
need to push it to 2, 3, 4 o'clock. Like people are doing this thing. There's good evidence that skipping meals is actually bad for you and that people who do it habitually actually have worse health outcomes, okay?
Got it.
So eat your breakfast. You want to have a high dopamine breakfast.
Yep.
Let's have, cottage cheese, eggs, tofu scramble, veggies, nuts, berries. Okay.
Great. When do I eat next?
Then you
Because I'm already hungry. Well, no. Am I hungry right now?
Yeah.
Would I eat vegetables? I would eat vegetables
There
right
you
now.
go.
So
Then
that
you're
must
hungry.
mean I'm hungry. But I got to have a glass of water first, and then I'm going to ask myself that again.
Yes. So
See, I'm learning.
then you tune in with the inner Mel, the
Yep.
brain gut Mel.
Yep. Okay.
So then you can eat when you're hungry. Again, you can use your inner cues. It could be 12, could be 1, whatever your inner cues.
Okay.
You'll notice your ghrelin is set to on a timer. Every day you'll get hungry at the same time.
So hello, ghrelin.
Yeah.
It just dumped on. It just I think dumped on me.
Yeah.
So what do you eat for lunch?
So basically, lunch is a chance for you to get the healthier you eat earlier in the day, the better your chance of sticking to it. So
Okay.
they always say exercise and eating healthier foods, breakfast and lunch is your best chance. So for me,
Okay.
I automated, and I had already talked to you when we had talked before that I try to eat the same things every day.
So what do you eat for lunch?
So I eat a salad for lunch. I usually put a protein source on it. It could be different beans, nuts, it could tofu, you could do eggs, you could do salmon, whatever you want. Protein and veggies. A salad with protein on it. And I always have a fermented probiotic food with my lunch, because that's the best time for you to get in at least 1 to 2 servings of the kimchi, of the sauerkraut. It could be kombucha for a drink, apple cider vinegar in your dressing.
Yep.
So that's when you have the best chance. Really simple. It
Okay.
can be very simple. And then your dinner is when you want to eat. If you are
Serotonin,
someone,
baby.
yes, you're learning.
I'm paying attention.
So if I know it's not sexy to say eat carbs, but carbs actually can be very healthy for you, especially in vegetable form, sweet potato, quinoa, whatever it is. You can eat that later in the day if you want to have that big boost of serotonin.
And what about snacks? If I'm like legit hungry, but I'm not really craving anything,
Yes.
but I'm legit hungry midday, what's your go-to snack?
So remember that protein has this effect on your body that it tells your hunger hormones to stop. So if you want more leptin, eat more protein. So your snack can be yogurt. Your snack can be a protein shake. Your snack can be a piece of cheese. It can, something with protein, because that will keep your dopamine levels up.
Okay.
And it will keep your hunger hormones stable. So protein snack, I think women especially, we're eating just too little protein. There is a theory
Yes.
that the reason we get fat from eating ultra-processed food is because it's so low in protein that your brain never gets the signal that you're full. Your protein threshold is never met.
Wow. One final thing I want to ask you, because we didn't really cover it, gluten. Everybody I know is gluten-free.
Yeah. It's not the gluten. There's very few people who are actually allergic to gluten. It is very common to have GI issues with processed gluten. So when you eat a lot of bread, pizza, carbs, but that's not the gluten itself. It's the fact that you're eating processed food. So gluten gets mislabeled all the time. What I say to people is go gluten-free for a few weeks, 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
See how you feel. When you add the gluten back, don't add back the bread, the cookies, the cakes, and the processed gluten. Add back a small wheat bulgur, like in a salad.
Okay.
Add back a healthy sourdough bread.
Okay.
Add back, wheat in small, unprocessed amounts, and then see how you feel. And what I realize is that people villainize gluten all the time. And in America, gluten-free has become such a tagline that those foods are more unhealthy.
Oh, because of all the processing. Look at you, Dr. Amy. Is there anything else on this topic that we did not get?
I think we covered so much. I think, like you said, and I have taken this to heart, is that there's no pill that's going to save you. There's no person that's going to save you. When you learn about all this, when you actually listen to your own self, you're going to be the one who saves yourself.
If you're not currently taking a high-quality multivitamin or other supplements, what are the non-negotiables where everybody should start?
For probably less than $1 a day, you can get what you need, which is a multivitamin.
Yep.
And I would say a good one. It's cleanly produced. It doesn't have fillers, additives,
How do you
dyes.
tell if it's a good one?
I have curated ones that are high grade. In other
Okay.
words, the ones that are manufactured in good manufacturing practices, that don't have fillers, chemicals, and additives, that are bioavailable forms of nutrients. And so if you stick with certain brands, you can kind of guarantee you're going to get that.
Okay.
Then I think a vitamin D for almost everybody, even in the summer. People are like, I'm taking, vitamin D in the summer. I don't need it. You do. Most people, unless they're out there running around half naked between 10 and 2 every day all year long, you're going to be vitamin D deficient.
That's only you. I've seen you in your before and after photos that we're going to link. The dude is tan with the six-pack. You're running around getting the vitamin D. He's embarrassed and laughing. We know it's true. Now, is there different forms of D,
Vitamin
like
D3,
D3?
Vitamin D3.
And do you have to take it with something
yeah.
else to be absorbed?
With fat. You need with fat. So with food, basically.
Okay.
So maybe between 1,000 to 5,000. The government guidelines say up to 4,000 is safe. So there's no downside to that. And then fish oil for most people, because 90+% of us are deficient in omega-3 fats because we don't eat wild food that much anymore.
What does the fat do?
These omega-3 fats are fats that we need in small amounts that are what our brains are made up of.
Oh.
They regulate inflammation. They are what our cell membranes are made of. They are basically the most critical fats that we consume, and most of us don't have enough of them. And they can treat depression and very many mental issues. Even ADD has been found to be helpful. Postpartum depression. I mean, so a lot of things that we just think, oh, what do we do with these things? But there are great studies that show that these can be effective. So I think that's a kind of basic non-negotiable.
Got it. So multivitamin, everybody, the D3
and fish oil.
And fish oil. What about magnesium? Because you've mentioned it a couple times.
That's my fourth one. But depending on your symptoms, and how do you know you need magnesium? Well,
I don't know. How do I know?
Listen up, everybody. It's pretty simple. If you have anything that's irritable or twitchy or spasmy, it's likely you're magnesium deficient. So if you're anxious, your emotions are twitchy. If you have palpitations, it's twitchy. If your colon's not working and it's in spasm, you have constipation. If you have muscle cramps, you have eye twitching. Any of those things are signs of low magnesium.
I'm just twitching as you describe those symptoms because I'm like, check. I'm going to use, I promised everybody a appointment, zero cost, with one of the world's most respected medical experts and leading voices in the functional medicine space. My toes cramp all the time.
Yeah.
Why?
Everybody's favorite radio station, you know what that is?
No.
WIFM.
What does that mean?
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? Yes, exactly.
So your toes.
Yes, my toes.
Probably cramp because you have either electrolyte imbalances or magnesium.
Oh.
And so if, people often don't have enough electrolytes in their diet, particularly potassium. So you can get that from eating lots of vegetables, from vegetable broths, or take electrolyte solutions. But taking magnesium is a huge cure for muscle cramps, and it's particularly foot cramps.
So what surprising things cause your magnesium to go down?
So we should have a lot of magnesium because it's in all foods, nuts and seeds, and a lot of plant foods. But we do so much to make our bodies dump magnesium in our urine. We drink too much soda, we have too much caffeine, too much alcohol, and too much stress, all of which cause us to lose magnesium in our urine.
How does it make you lose magnesium if you drink a soda?
Well, it's got something called phosphoric acid in it, which is in the dark colored colas, and that causes you to leach magnesium out. And
wow.
Yeah.
And what about seltzer versus water? I'm really curious about whether or not drinking seltzer.
It's okay to drink bubbly water. I think you should mix it up. But if you only drink bubbly water, it's probably not totally great for you. But if you have water and sparkling water, if you like that, I love sparkling water. So not an issue.
All right. Well, thank you, doctor. ADHD is not a disease.
No, they're just.
Let's talk about depression though, because that is technically like a disease, right?
Well, anxiety is a disease, and ADD is considered a disease. I mean,
why?
They're in the disease classification manual. I don't agree. I think here. Let me just back up a little bit. We have like 155,000 diseases in our doctor manual that we can pick from when we want to diagnose somebody, and most of them are just descriptions of the symptoms that people have, but tell you nothing about the cause.
So is the root cause inflammation? Is that the root cause of all of this?
Many things is inflammation.
What is the root?
Everything.
What are the options when it comes to root cause for you as a functional medical doctor?
Yeah. So basically, at the beginning, we talked about taking out the bad stuff, putting in the good stuff.
Yeah.
And the body's not that complicated. I mean, it's complex. It's very dynamic, but basically, it needs certain things to thrive, and certain things make it not thrive, right? So what are the things that we need to think about getting rid of that the body doesn't like?
Okay.
Bad food.
Yep.
And we've sort of defined that's processed food, sugar, most of the stuff that people are eating. 60% of our diet is ultra processed food, which is deadly. It's stress, and it can be physical or psychological stress. And a lot of, stress is really defined as the perception of a real or imagined threat to your body or your ego. So it could be a tiger chasing you, or you could think your spouse is cheating on you, but it's not true.
Or you could think that your boss is mad at you.
Yeah, like Woody Allen with a gun to his head has one reaction. James Bond has another action, right?
That's an interesting
Same gun, different response. So
yes.
Perception is our mindset, our beliefs, our attitudes. A lot of things you talk about, Mel, are really what drives our stress response.
How does a negative thought cause a physiological problem in your body? A stress response.
I'm going to answer that. Can I finish
No, you can't. No,
because you have ADD. Because I'm just going to continue with the thing that I wanted to say.
I clearly need to eat more vegetables. God damn it!
I'll come back to that. So the other few things that are the things that cause our body to be out of balance, besides bad food and stress are toxins. So we are living in a sea of environmental toxins, from heavy metals to pesticides.
Okay.
Our gut and microbiome is a huge factor. So an unhealthy gut and bad bugs, and it can be infections or can mostly come from the gut. And last is things that irritate our immune system, like allergens or sensitivities.
Okay.
Those 5 things.
So say them again. Bad foods.
Bad food, stress, toxins, bad bugs, and
sensitivity.
allergens.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And those interact with our biology with 7 basic systems that we have that keep us healthy. And if we have those things, they create imbalance. So we have to get rid of those things, take out the bad stuff. So what are the good stuff? What are the ingredients for health? How does our bodies thrive? We know how to take care of our car. We change the oil. We fill up the air in our tires. We, get the tune-up. We change the spark plugs, whatever. Like most of us have a clue. In our bodies, we have no clue. So what are the things our bodies need? We need the right nutrients and nutrition. And it's a little bit personalized, but I've written a lot about how to find a way of eating that's good for you and that you like. It's culturally relevant. It's affordable. Second is nutrients. We are often deficient in many nutrients, particularly omega-3s, vitamin D, B vitamins, iron, zinc. These are magnesium, common nutritional deficiencies that have broad impacts across the body, including our mood. Then we need the right balance of hormones. We need the right amount of light at the right time. So if you're having, blue light at night, you're not going to sleep. If you don't have, blue light in the morning, your brain can't reset for the day.
When you say blue light in the morning, are you talking about bright
Sunlight.
light outside?
Sunlight.
Okay.
Go outside.
I didn't really
20 minutes.
realize that sunlight was blue light.
Yeah, well, it's got blue in the blue light spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so at night we just are overstimulated with our computers and our screens, and this screws up. So we need the right kind of light. We need the right type of clean air. We need clean water. We need movement, like exercise. We need resetting, restoration, relaxation, resetting the vagus nerve, sympathetic nervous system needs to be calmed down, right? That's not a passive activity. So you have to actively relax, right? Whether it's breathing or yoga or meditation or whatever, prayer, journaling, a million ways to do it. Then we need also sleep. And most of us are not getting enough sleep or good quality sleep. So 7-8 hours minimum for most people is essential. And there's a lot of talk we can talk about sleep. And then we need connection, community, love, meaning and purpose. These are all ingredients for health. In my book, I talk about how, for example, if we cured heart disease and cancer from the face of the planet, we'd extend our life by 5 to 7 years.
If we cured loneliness?
If we cured loneliness and develop connection and meaning and purpose, we extend our life by 7 years or more. So wait a minute. Basically, having meaning and purpose and connection in your life is more powerful than curing cancer and heart disease in terms of longevity. So we and I know from my travel to blue zones, that was a big part of the medicine they had, was community is medicine.
Right.
Connection is medicine.
Yeah.
And
And I'm sure you're seeing it as a epidemic of loneliness, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Totally. So those are the ingredients for health that we need to provide, and everybody needs different ones. For example, some people might need more vitamin D, some people might need more sleep, some people need different kind of exercise. So it's really personalized, but those are the basic ingredients. So
it's
that's
sort of personalized, right? Because like just talking to the broad audience that's listening, you've mentioned a number of supplements, and it's the same ones over and over. So for anybody listening that's like, okay, I got it, I have to do something. We've already talked about diet and changing your diet, and even just noticing that if you were to remove the things we've talked about and add in this very simple, clean, healthy, vegetable forward and clean protein diet, in 6 to 10 days, you're going to feel like a different person. Just try it.
Try it. And then you can decide what you want to do after that, right?
Yes.
I want to keep eating my donuts. Okay, fine. Then you're going to feel like crap. And if you want to feel like crap, it's your prerogative. Right?
Well, I'll tell you something. I am now on, it's like, I don't know, day 30 something of not drinking. It's life-changing.
Yeah, totally.
It's totally life-changing. And I cannot believe how much clearer I am. I cannot believe how much more present I am. I cannot believe that I don't really miss it.
Yep.
And I had committed to doing this for almost 3 months, and I don't know how I'll incorporate it back, if ever. Maybe here and there, but it just was such a profound difference for me that I'm kind of dumbfounded I didn't do this earlier.
Yeah.
And so I think you can tell almost immediately. And what Tina's asking is, how the hell do I change my mindset? How do I stop trying to find it outside of me? I don't even know how to begin to find it inside of me. In fact, you mentioned that you were depressed, and I was reading an article where you were interviewed, and you said that you were
writing in a journal during this period, and the first entry you wrote was, I don't remember being happy, and I don't think I'll ever be happy again. And now you're like the world's guru of happiness. So in that moment, though, Sean, you had an experience that I think everybody has at some point. I'm not happy, and I don't think I'll ever be happy again. And so what's the first thing that you would want somebody to know if that's where you are right now?
I think the very first thing I'd want is actually the recognition, because I kind of wish I had known that earlier, that whole thing we're talking about. 'Cause I think you're right. I think we all have that moment where you realize, I thought I'd be happy when, and it didn't work. But then if you ask somebody why they're not happy, they'll tell you about one of their externals, right? I'm not happy right now because I don't have a boyfriend. I'm not happy right now because I've got this guy at work, right? I'm not happy right now because I don't have enough money. So I think the very first step might be acknowledging it, that the human brain is designed to foil any attempt that success will guarantee happiness. Because every time you hit one of those targets, we change what we think would create happiness. I think the best example of that is actually the pandemic, because I think at the beginning of it, in the middle of it, everyone thought, think how happy we're going to be when the pandemic wanes.
That's
and
true.
The pandemic is waning, and we don't have that guaranteed levels of happiness. And what we forgot was there wasn't 100% levels of happiness before the pandemic, right? So I think the first is a recognition that this isn't working. From there, I think that it requires a mindset shift and a behavioral shift. In that article and in the work that I do, I research what we can do to create happiness when the world doesn't look like it should. And I think one important caveat to that is that while I'm talking about what we can do internally, that doesn't negate the need for external changes.
Yes.
We have systemic reasons why there's inequality, discrimination, racism that we should fight.
Absolutely.
I believe what gives us the power to fight that is the internal changes.
Yes.
So, and that everyone needs to do it, not just, the people seeking happiness, right? The people who are being discriminatory need to do it too.
So let's start with the mindset. What is one step, one simple step that somebody who is sitting alone, like Sean, unhappy Sean, back in, the mid 2010s, writing, I don't remember being happy and I don't think I'll ever be happy again. How the hell do you change your mindset? Because if you keep saying that to yourself, you're not going to be able to access happiness within.
Right. Well, I think there's something unique in that moment because I was attempting to do something about it because I'm trying to write in a journal to be happier. I'm just like, I don't think this is going to work, which we know from research, that's not a great mentality. Like you can predict the course of treatment based on whether or not you believe the doctor can heal you, right? So that was not an auspicious place to start.
Okay, so Sean, are you telling us that what you're about to tell us to do is going to work and we should believe in our ability to change our mindset and to take actions and to access happiness?
Yes, I would wholeheartedly say that. Not only because I've experienced myself, but then we've researched it ever since. I mean, what I've learned in this research is that depression was not the end of the story at all. And that even in the midst of a broken world, in fact, only in the midst of a broken world, have we ever been able to create happiness. So the question is, how do we do so? I think the starting point is realizing not only that our strategy wasn't working, but acknowledging that there are multiple realities in this moment. And one of them is, I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or I don't have this money, or I don't have this job that I want, or I'm frustrated about whatever it is. I think when you acknowledge that that's true, you could say that's one reality, but there's also some other realities as well. Last week I went to the hospital because I was having chest pains.
You were?
Young, yeah. I was in ER. I missed my very first talk in 2 decades. And, I realized in that moment when they strip you of kind of everything and the doctor's going to knock on the door. When the doctor knocked on the door, I was like, this could change my life. It didn't. I was completely fine. But in that moment, like my whole life changed, right? My whole life could have changed and was completely disrupted within those moments. I think when we realize that there's multiple realities in that moment, one of them is I missed a talk. I'm not with my family. I'm in a hospital I don't want to be in. That's true. On the other hand, I'm going home today, right? I'm going home to 2 kids that I love and a wife that I love, right? Those are equally true, but in the same reality. And because my brain has a limited amount of resources, I need to choose. And I need to choose what I'm going to be focusing my brain on. There is so much negative in this world that I could spend the entire rest of my life focusing upon that and upon my fear. But that doesn't serve me at all. It's not a valuable reality for me. That in the midst of these multiple and true realities, I'm going to look at the ones that and focus on the ones that are going to allow me to fix the negative parts of my life, or that are at least going to give me the optimism and happiness and joy to take the next step and the next step. In depression, I just needed a step forward. I felt like I just stopped moving. So I started doing these habits, and these are the habits that we know work. And these are all the things you know about as well, right? The gratitude, for example. And I think that this would be my answer to someone sitting there and to that, that 26-year-old boy who is feeling this, was in those moments, I needed to scan. I need to stop scanning for all the deficits in my life. And I need to use some of those finite resources to scan the world for the things that I was grateful for. And it was hard because my brain kept being like, yes, but what about this?
Yes.
But what about this thing you don't have, right?
Yes.
So I had to literally train my brain. And we train it exactly like we've seen anything else with the human body, is I had to keep doing it, right? Like I can't build a bicep if I only lift a weight once, then I'm done, right? I had to do it every day. And I had to create a pattern out of it, even when I wasn't sure it was going to work. And even when I could see no change in my life. I'd say for the first, easily for the first 2 weeks, I saw no change in my life.
Well,
I want to
sitting
there trying to.
Oh, go ahead. You sorry.
I'm just sitting there writing down things I'm grateful for, and my life still feels terrible. Like I remember breathing hurt when I was depressed, because like everything hurt, like and everything didn't seem like it was worthwhile. I
What
think one
kept
thing
you
that's really
going?
important to say. So that's the thing. I don't get to talk about this much in any of the interviews, so I'd love to talk about this too, because I think you're going deeper, than some of the surface questions we normally get. I think that the habits are what pulled me out of depression. I write my gratitudes, I journal, I do exercise, I write a 2-minute kind note almost every day. I'd say 90+% days since my mid-20s. I know that when I don't do those things, it's like when I don't brush my teeth, I get this film in my mouth. That's what I feel like my world looks like when I don't do those habits. Those habits are the building blocks for creating happiness. But the turning point for me, which I never get to talk about, the turning point for me in all of this was actually not me. My job was to make sure other people didn't get depressed. So I kept trying to be there for other people. I was just supposed to be this paragon of, of knowing what you were supposed to do and optimism, right? And I kept going deeper and deeper in depression because I knew that there is a dissonance between what I was feeling and what I was showing to the world. The turning point for me and what actually got me to try to do those habits was at the bottom of the depression for me. I turned to my 8 closest friends and family and told them that I was going through depression. And, a couple of these people were sort of my competitors there at Harvard, right? Or my peers. And I told them I was going through depression. I said, it's genetic. There's nothing you can do. My grandmother, grandparents, like it's genetic. I just wanted to tell somebody. But immediately the groundswell of support was phenomenal. They kept calling me. They emailed me. They met up with me. One of them brought me cupcakes. It's not what I did it, to get cupcakes. But as soon as I did that, everything changed. And the reason for it was actually a study I found way later in my life. It was a study by these 2 researchers in Virginia, and they found that if you look at a hill you need to climb in front of you, if you look at that hill by yourself, your brain shows you a picture of a hill that looks 20 to 30% steeper when you're alone compared to that hill that you look at of the same height while standing next to someone who you're told is going to climb the hill with you. So I said that in a convoluted way. When you're alone, hills actually look 20 to 30% steeper to the visual cortex, which is amazing because I thought we have this objective view of the world, right? That's bad. This is good. This is how tall that mountain is. And what we realized was it was one of those matrix moments where I realized that the world is not objective, it's subjective. And that hill, those challenges are collapsing and expanding based upon whether or not you think you're radically alone going through this and trying to get out of this, or whether you're with other people. So as soon as I did that, as soon as I opened up to other people, that was the turning point, because it was the move from happiness as a self-help idea to this recognition that happiness was not an individual sport at all. And suddenly that hill of overcoming depression in front of me dropped by 20 to 30%. And they opened up about things they were dealing with. None of them was depression, but it was just challenges they were experiencing. And we started creating these meaningful narratives and social bonds that made me want to do the habits because there was something worth doing the habits for. So it was a combination of habits and social connection and a mindset shift that allowed in that moment to break from this idea that nothing matters and that there's nothing that I can do that matters and that I have to just wait for the world to change.
Well, it makes perfect sense. And it reminds me of the fact that the Surgeon General just had that op-ed piece that went viral yesterday about the epidemic of loneliness. And in his op-ed piece in the New York Times, he talked about his own struggle with it and how the turning point was him admitting, just like you did, to his college, to his family friends, and to a few colleagues that he was really struggling with this. And it was their checking in on him and them sharing back that they felt disconnected from social groups and from themselves as well after the last 3 years that really was the turning point. But I love that you added that research, because it is true. When you are down and sad and you feel like a sad sack that nobody wants to hang out with, that's the story you tell yourself. And that story then, and the emotions that feel low, make you keep isolating. And it's when you reach out that you change the behavior and you change the narrative. And then that provides a little bit of that intrinsic lift that you need, that maybe there is something I can do. Maybe there is hope. I want to go a little bit deeper on this, because you've been there and I've been there and lots of people listening have been there and are there right now. And so when somebody like you come in, or I'm sitting here on the mic, it's so easy to be resigned and like push everybody away and be like, well, that's great for you, Sean, but you don't know what I'm going through. And I think this question, Andrea, it's actually number 3. It's Charmaine. Let's play Charmaine's question, because I think it's going to help us even go a little bit deeper to provide some hope, Sean, for somebody who's really feeling like I've tried everything.
Since my teen years, I've been asking myself, why am I here? What's my purpose? How do I create happiness within myself? I've made so much progress, yet right now I feel lost. I feel like a failure. I feel not good enough. I feel like I'm not a good girl. I feel like I'm not a good enough mom to my daughters. I feel selfish. I feel off course and like I'm not living up to my potential. I've done the work. I know this is coming from my limiting beliefs, trauma, projections that I have taken on as truth. Yet, here I am, feeling lost, alone, and frankly stupid. I do understand the privilege I possess. I practice gratitude. I know I am blessed. And I do a lot of things right. I don't think I'm depressed. I'm not completely unhappy. So what the fuck am I? I'm in some goddamn vortex of nirvana and hell.
Sean, what pops out at you?
So many things. First of all, how self-aware this person is, right? To be able, in the midst of this, to be able to identify the stages that they've been through, where they are currently, a recognition of the good, but also feeling like that they don't feel good enough and that there's more potential. What I kept hearing in my head over and over again is, this sounds like me. This sounds so human. I think we fluctuate all the time between this, like, I've got things going, and then, wow, I certainly don't. Like, if I have a really productive Monday, I get everything done and I'm super cleaning the house. Tuesday and Wednesday are terrible. Like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do anything. I feel like I waste every Tuesday and Wednesday whenever I have an amazing Monday. I think that that's because we swing, right? And I think what our hunger for is, if our hunger is for a mountaintop experience all the time, that we always know that we're loved, that we're always amazing, that we're always beautiful and the smartest person in the room, I think that that's an illusion and a false desire, because I think it's an accurate reflection that we are not living up to our potential. I think that that's true all the time. I think that I could be doing better as a dad. I could be doing better as a husband. I know that when I work really hard at being a great dad, I know I immediately look around at all the people that are doing amazing things at work, and I'm like, whoa, I'm so behind. Then when I do a ton of stuff for work or travel ever, then I'm like, oh, I should be a better dad, right? I swing back and forth between this. And I think what we need are those anchor points in the midst of it. So if what and where those anchor points come from, you had me on the show or to join you because I researched this, but I also went to the divinity school before getting into this. So what motivated my beliefs in why positive psychology mattered came from this belief that the story we tell ourselves and the lens through which we view the world changes how we act in it and where we find our meaning and where we find that value. And I think that those narratives, those belief systems, can answer some of those questions about how can I feel loved even when I'm not achieving my highest, right, or my potential. I think in the world that's very difficult because then we get on Instagram and we know exactly who's doing great, based upon likes, right, or based upon some sort of quantification, or money can tell you who's doing great and who's not, and none of those fill that void. So where those anchor points could come from, I think that they have to come from other people as well. There was a study that came out of Stanford that found that loneliness had nothing to do with actually the number of people within your life. Loneliness was simply the absence of meaning you felt in the relationships with other people and their meaningful impact upon you. That if you weren't doing anything meaningful for other people's lives, then you didn't feel social connection for the people that are around you all the time, right? And vice versa. So if that's the case, if meaning is what's driving our levels of happiness, then I think my grandmother's said it, she's like, if you want a friend, you have to be a friend. And I was like, okay, that's overly simplistic.
Not
I also
really,
want a girlfriend,
actually.
right? That's not working out for me. I can't be the girlfriend, right? So in that moment, like I didn't understand. Now I get it. What we're finding is that when people are experiencing that fluctuation back and forth, I think we're searching for meaning. And people search it for in different ways. Religion and philosophy and psychology. I think that a lot of the things that we search for don't work out for us, which is why we get to the point where she's talking about where we feel this vortex of I've got it, I don't have it, got it, I don't have it, because we're reaching onto things oftentimes that are illusory while we're grabbing onto things that are true. My mentor Tal Ben Shahar said that you're never as great as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. And what I loved about that is that meant that there was a middle path in the midst of it, right? That sometimes when I think I'm a great, speaker or whatever it is, then I get humbled very quickly by anything, right? Or if I think that I'm, not doing great, then occasionally I'll get an email and it's like, hey, this was really important to me, right? That middle path was actually the one that I wanted to be in. And it's this recognition and being okay with, I am not at my full potential, but that's okay. And the reason that's okay is because I'm having a meaningful impact upon other people. So that habit that I mentioned of writing a 2-minute positive email, praising or thanking someone else, I found that one to be probably the most helpful of any of the things that I've researched, because you can take someone in a socially isolated state with high levels of introversion, and if every day they scan for one new person to write a 2-minute positive email to, they stop on day 8, unless we pay them $15. On day 8, that's when they realize fully that they're not a crazy extrovert with all these friends that they could write to. They're like, I wrote to everyone on my favorites list and my mom twice. That's everyone. And then they scan and they remember, who's that mentor who got me into this job? Or who's that high school teacher that seemed to have some answer to some of those questions that person was just asking? Or what about my kid's first grade teacher who transformed my son's life, but I don't talk to them anymore because my kid's in second grade.
Right.
And you start to see all these people that are in our lives that we're not connecting with, and a 2-minute email thanking them or praising them or saying, I've seen how you've been going through breast cancer, and it inspires me that you're able to find happiness in low health when I struggle to find happiness when I seem to have higher health, right? That those moments, that just brief meaningful act using technology for 2 minutes, we found that if you do it for 21 days in a row, your social connection score rises up to the top 15% of people worldwide, right? That's including extroverts, right? And what we found was that you were lighting up these nodes of meaningful connections on your mental map of social connection. And that I think if you look at the philosophers, I think if you look at religion, I think if you look at psychology, they keep breaking down this idea that you can achieve happiness alone, that you could just figure out your thoughts enough and then you did it. You can just maintain your happiness. That happiness and meaning only come from this interplay with the ecosystem, with others around us.
I love that.
This,
I want to go ahead. Or if you're about to talk another study, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to tell one quick study. It's
Please.
A beautiful one. It's not about humans. You probably heard this one. This was also in the New York Times as well. They had there's a study where they found all these fireflies everywhere light up individually and randomly in the dark. And that's how they attract a mate. And their success rate per night per bug is 3%, which I'm told is good. But these researchers found on opposite sides of the globe, these two species, one in Southeast Indonesia and one in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee that you can take buses out to go see. And these fireflies have these neurotransmitters that allow them to all light up and all go dark at the same time, which is beautiful, but not that smart because we live in a survival of the fittest world, right? We're told be the fastest, smartest, brightest light shining, otherwise you'll never be successful. And at MIT, they studied these fireflies and they realized we just understand how systems work, that when they lit up together, seemingly with their competition, the success rate doesn't drop. The success rate goes from 3% to 82% per bug. It's not like one bug does better. The whole system was doing orders of magnitude better than we thought was possible, because as they lit up together, their light became brighter. And it was attracting more and more potential mates than a single light would have been able to do, and create these virtuous cycles. And we kept seeing the same thing when we looked at humans. We found that the greatest predictor of long-term levels of happiness, as you know, one of the greatest predictors is social connection. Mm-hmm. It's the breadth, depth, and meaning in your social relationships. So it's not something you could figure out in your head, and then you did it, and then you can hold happiness forever. It's about finding a way of lighting up with other people and getting them to light up as well.
So, Sean, what I love about what you just said, especially in response to that question from Charmaine, is that I was listening to her just tick off one negative, nasty, critical thought after another. I could feel like this heaviness. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, wait a minute. I bet happiness is broken into two things. It is from the neck up, and it's the things that you tell yourself. But it is also, and probably way more important, that you think about the things that you're doing from the neck down. And that's where these habits come in. That if it's all doom and gloom from the neck up, you're not going to feel any sort of motivation, hope, or interest in lighting up with everybody else. But if you can force yourself to start ticking off these simple habits that you recommend, that you practice, that you've researched, and you just highlighted the one of taking and making a 2-minute note, just a 2-minute note every single day for 21 days, it will have an impact in how you feel, which of course will start to shift all that shit you've been saying to yourself, which probably is stuff that you heard your parents say to themselves. And so what I love about your research is that you're also making it actionable, because I think that's part of the problem, that when we feel shitty and we say shitty things to ourselves, we don't take the actions that actually change it.
I heard one time I was on a plane and the woman sitting, I don't know, kitty corner behind me and, to the back, she said she was talking to somebody else loudly that she had just met about all these psychological understandings about herself, like literally a litany of all the psychological problems that she had. And I realized she said she'd been going to therapy for years. She had this incredible knowledge about herself and understanding where she was. And it didn't, at no point did she ever mention anything she was doing about it, right? She was talking to a stranger about it, right? Which, was more trauma dumping than actually trying to move forward. But I think there's this moment where, I really thought that if I read enough books that I'd find happiness, right? I thought that if I read enough books, I'd be smart and then people would like me. That was completely not true, right? And I think that we take these paths, and I love what you're saying there, is that there's this interplay between the beliefs and the actions that we do. You see the same thing with religion, right? Between this faith and works, right? Like it's the things you believe, but if you say you believe those, but you're not doing any of those, I'm not sure you actually believe these things, right? That there's got to be connection between those. And what I would say is, in addition to that, is don't try to do it alone, right? I think that we treat happiness like self-help. Like I know our books are in self-help sections sometimes, right? But as soon as we do this on our own, without that friend, without that mentor, without those people that we're doing meaningful acts for, then we get frustrated very quickly and think we're doing something wrong. And what's wrong is actually the formula. Like happiness never works out if it's an individual pursuit. And that's one of those other mindset shifts I think was crucial um, to find, that there wasn't, you can't do enough yoga to force yourself into happiness unless that yoga causes you to be more peaceful with that interaction with your mother-in-law.
That's like happiness applied. I want to go back to Carrie's question and talk about specific tools that you can use to start to address this now that we know what we're dealing with. We'll be right back.
Hey Mel, I'm a 53-year-old woman, a creative leader with, to the outside world at least, a so-called great career, I guess you'd say, but with crippling anxiety and exhausting overthinking. Traveling, accompanied by panic attacks. Oh, what the heck. I've had this issue for 30 years, and all the guided meditations and mindfulness training pods in the world aren't helping. So what steps can I take to stop this, to heal and find a new peace before I chuck in the towel and just barricade myself in at home? Thanks for everything. Bye.
Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and that was a listener of the Mel Robbins podcast named Carrie. Today, we are talking anxiety toolkit. How do you heal from it? We're here with the world-renowned Dr. Russell Kennedy, and we've been talking about how all anxiety begins in childhood, which is why if you're ever going to heal it, you're going to have to go back to those moments in your past and in your childhood that were painful, when you felt unsafe or separate. And I promised that we would take Carrie's question and now dive into tools. What are specific tools that we can use, Dr. Kennedy, to truly start to heal this? Do you print out a photo of yourself when you were little and you make that your screensaver, which it feels like we should? How do you start? Oh my gosh. Oh,
That's me at 3.
Rusty.
Yep, that's Rusty.
So for those of you who are listening to this and not watching this podcast on YouTube, Dr. Kennedy just held up the homepage of his phone, and there was a photo of him that's 3 years old. It just made my heart go,
Yeah,
oh.
he's pretty cute.
So what does it do
cute.
if you do that for yourself?
Well, that's the start, right? Because there's so much resistance to going back to visiting. That's the big thing, because the child in us needs this love and support so much that it creates all this alarm to get our attention. And yet as adults, we push the alarm away. So it's kind of like, and I think I might've mentioned this in the last, podcast that we did, is that if a child came up to you with their hands up in a grocery store, like they'd lost their parents, of course you would soothe them. But we have this alarm that goes off in our system, which is essentially the younger version of us going, hey, pick me up. Pick me up. I need some attention. I need some love. And instead we go to the internet and zombie scroll Instagram or go into our addictions or whatever. And we push that child away. So the child just gets louder. The alarm just gets louder and louder and louder. But there is a resistance to going back. So the adult doesn't want to go back and visit the child because the child holds all their pain. And the child has a real mistrust of us as adults because we've been ignoring their alarm for 30 years. So it's really important that we start slowly and you make that connection. So when you say get a picture, that can be really triggering for people. So sometimes I just say, in your mind's eye, picture yourself at any age as a child that you want. Picture what you're wearing, picture yourself maybe at a happy time in your life. Like for you, it was like skiing or something like that. Picture yourself in this happy place. And that way you start making that connection because, just to go in and it's, you're going to blow your brains out if you go back in and you go right to the child, go right to the trauma. So go to a place that you felt good. And I use this a lot when I work with people is, what was the best time in your life? Like, what was the best time in your life, Mel?
I just immediately had this image of being on the front yard of our house in Michigan, and there were all kinds of kids around, and it was a beautiful summer night, and it was kind of that time of night where it's not quite dark, but it's not quite daytime. It's that beautiful. It's my favorite time of night, dusk, when the twinkly stars first start to come out, and it's kind of confusing because the sun's up, but you see the moon, and you know that the sun's about to set, and we are playing games. Like we're playing base and statue and all kinds of just tag and like just that moment right there with my brother and a bunch of other kids in the neighborhood running around being kids in the front yard of our house in Michigan where I grew up.
Okay, so close your eyes and really get into that image. Like see your brother, see your house. Relax your shoulders, relax your jaw. Nice breath in and out. Just really see if you can drink in the emotion of that. And where you feel it in your body. Where do you feel that in your body?
Oh, I kind of feel it from my cheeks all the way to my heart. It's like this sort of like definitely like for sure the heart.
So this is something I would add to high-fiving yourself in the mirror is go back to the best time in your life. When you're high-fiving yourself in the mirror, because then we're getting your insulin involved, we're getting your brain involved in this whole feeling state, because the feeling state is what changes us. We can change our thoughts at a dime, but the feeling state is what changes our nervous system. So when you do the high five habit, when you're high-fiving yourself in the mirror, recall the best time in your life and just try and see if you can really get a felt sense of that. Now, what I will do with people who have suffered trauma is I will take them, once I have them grounded and once they trust me and stuff, I will take them into their trauma, and then I will take them into the best time in their life. So with you, I might do, and we're shortening this considerably for the podcast, but for you, I might say, okay, if you feel safe enough that we talk about that kid, waking up with that kid on top of you and getting into that feeling. Now, where do you feel that in your body? And is this okay,
like
Mel, to
right
go into
in the
this?
gut.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like right in the
Okay.
gut. Like I immediately was like went from like the heart being full to like right in the gut. And the
Okay.
ankles, weird, the ankles.
So what I would do is I would go back and go, okay, now go back to that feeling of dusk. You can see your house, you're playing statue. It's fun. You feel calm, peaceful, happy. Now let's go into your gut. Let's go into that sensation again of, waking up with that kid on top of you. If it's okay to stay there for a second. And then lovingly go back up into that place in your chest and your throat where you felt really peaceful and happy playing with your brother.
It's amazing because I feel the gut like pulling me down. Like that. It's easy to drop into the gut.
Yep.
And the bad experience. It's hard to pull yourself from that back up into this experience that I can feel that's positive. Is that normal?
That's absolutely normal. We're wired that way, Mel. We're wired to pay more attention to fearful situations than pleasurable ones, because in our evolution, that's basically what kept us alive. So in healing this, we have to heal this at a feeling level. We can talk about that kid on top of you for the rest of your life without really changing it too much. You might get a better understanding of it cognitively, but to really change that sensation, we have to use another sensation, because that's the language of trauma, is sensation. It's the body. So we use that good feeling that you have, and then we go back and forth. We oscillate between back and forth, and it starts weakening that power, that negative feeling in your body that you associate with being a victim, with being helpless.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing about, when I love when you say you're talking about play, because the way this comes into play is trauma activates both the sympathetic, the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, at the same time, because we're so confused. We don't know. Yeah. Because once you get up to a certain point in sympathetic activity, your body can't handle it anymore. So it shuts down. So we go into parasympathetic. We don't go into pleasant parasympathetic, but we go into shutdown parasympathetic. And then it goes back and forth and back and forth. And a lot of us with anxiety That's what happens during the day. We go into this place where our body just gets exhausted. So we feel okay. We don't feel that tremendous, anxiety anymore. And then once we get rested in the parasympathetic, then the sympathetic comes back online and we go right back into anxiety again. So the thing about play, and play is so important for healing, is it's another thing that activates both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic activity at the same time. So trauma activates co-activation, they call it. So trauma activates parasympathetic and sympathetic simultaneously. So does play. But play allows you to start metabolizing. So when you're in co-activation, when your parasympathetic and your sympathetic is active at the same time, it's like having your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. When you're in play, you start realizing, hey, you know what? This sensation is actually okay. It doesn't have to fire me right into the trauma. So that's why play, one of the reasons why play is so important in healing trauma, is because we get that felt sense of activation of both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic at the same time in a safe place, because play is safe and it's fun.
Okay, so going back to Carrie, and number one, it was very clear to you as an expert and a medical doctor and a neuroscientist that she's dealing with stored trauma. And step one is kind of recognizing that. And then the next thing she needs to do is to recognize that thinking keeps you in the coping, and that this is really going to be about dropping into your body and learning how to reconnect and heal in your body. And one of the things that you have recommended is that we think about this as younger self-work, and that you can go back to positive times and feel that good sensation, that if you're ready for it, printing out a photo of yourself or putting it on your phone so that you are reconnecting with that version of you where you started to feel separate or unsafe or scared. And that is a way to start this process. Is there anything else that you would recommend that Carrie think about?
Yeah, you have to do it slowly. You have to start, because the thing is, when we go into our alarm, we don't want to go in there. Like, it feels painful to go in there. So do it slowly, and this is, if you have a real significant trauma, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, you probably need a therapist, and maybe a somatic therapist, to kind of help you get into this place, because it's not for amateurs in a way. If you have big trauma, if you have trauma that's manageable, absolutely you can work it on your own. But if you have big T trauma, doing this on your own can re-traumatize. So you need someone else there. You need someone there who you wish was there at the time of the trauma. And that person is you. That person is you. It's like, you can go back. We can use our amygdala. We can use that sense that we are not locked in time. We can go back and find that, like what I have on my phone. I can look at his eyes. I can imagine his eyes too. And there's a great song by Peter Gabriel that I listen. We're getting into Dr. Kennedy's world a little bit. Every morning I do this meditation that I make for myself. And then on top of that, I end it all by listening to Peter Gabriel's song, In Your Eyes. So he has two versions. One's a recorded, which is about 5 minutes, and one's a live version. And he talks about in your eyes. And it's about in your eyes as a child. The light, the peace, I am complete. I see the vision of 1,000 doors. I see my divinity. I see my connection with myself. And I look at that little picture of me that's here on my phone while I listen to that song. And the lyrics of that song are so powerful. If you imagine, all my instincts, they return. Like, all your instincts return when you connect with that version of yourself that was hurt and in pain. That's what happens. And that's how you heal from anxiety and alarm. We could cope all we want, but if you want to heal, you have to find that child in you, and you have to show them that they're seen, heard, loved, and protected. And one of the ways that I do that every day is I start my day with that song, looking at him. And I use different pictures of me, but that's the main one because it's on my phone and it's right there already.
Wow. You write so much about food, and we've already started talking about it. And in particular, I'm a huge fan of your book, The Blood Sugar Solution, which is where I think you're one of the first people to start talking about the vagus nerve and the power of the vagus nerve, which we talk about on this show constantly.
Yeah.
And The Ultra Mind Solution is a book.
Oldies but goodies.
Oh, yeah. Oldies but goodies. But listen, everybody, and I'm going to have you explain it. You may have heard that your gut is called the second brain.
Yeah.
But what you may not know is that during the formation of you as a human being, the same embryonic clump that forms the brain also forms the gut. And they separate, but they stay connected via neurotransmitters. Yeah. So I think about it like almost like goop. Like you break goop in half and it's got those stringy sections and part of it becomes your brain and the second part becomes the gut.
Well, they call it your gut brain or your second brain.
Yes. And that they talk to each other all the time.
Completely, yeah.
And so where I want to start with this is, can you explain the connection between your gut and your gut health and your overall health? And then we're going to get into specific mental health issues that people struggle with and the gut.
Absolutely. What was really amazing to me, Mel, is I began to practice functional medicine. I began to, treat people's guts. I would help their immune system get better. I'd get them on anti-inflammatory diets. And as a side effect, they would report to me that my ADD is better, my depression's gone, my panic attacks are gone, my mood is better, I'm sleeping better. All these things, I'm like, really? What's going on here? And I began to really inquire about this process of how everything below the neck is influencing everything above the neck.
Yes.
So the subtitle of the Ultramind Solution is how to fix your broken brain by fixing your body first. Right? And what's really amazing is the microbiome is this new frontier. In addition to the understanding of the gut brain and the gut nervous system and the brain nervous system and how they're connected, and that's a real thing.
Yep.
There's constant communication. There's more neurotransmitters in your gut than your brain. But what's now happening is the understanding of this sea of bacteria in there that are all speaking to you every minute. And I just had talked to a scientist who was researching a particular microbe in the gut. And it's a big word. It's called Akkermansia. Don't worry about it. It's just one of the bacteria that lives in there.
I already forgot it.
Okay. And what's amazing is as they were fermenting growing this bacteria to put in a probiotic, which is very powerful for many things, for regulating metabolism and mood and blood sugar and everything, they discovered that this vat of the byproducts of this bacteria was something called GABA. Now, GABA is a calming neurotransmitter.
Oh.
When people take Valium, that's what it's doing. It's activating the GABA receptors in the brain to calm you down and relax you. So when you think if you have the right bacteria in your gut, you're producing compounds and neurotransmitters that are going to your brain and making you either relaxed and calm or depressed. There's a woman at Harvard, Uma Naidu, who's studying very actively the microbiome and depression as a way to treat mental illness, fix the gut.
Wow. Okay, I want to have you define a few things for us. So you've used the word inflammation a lot.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, everybody knows.
Everybody does not know.
You got a sore throat, that's inflammation. You cut your finger, it gets red and pussy, that's inflammation.
Oh.
Right?
No, I'd never thought about it that way.
You sprain your knee, it swells up. That's
that I know.
That's inflammation.
But when you functional medicine doctors throw around the word inflammation, inflammation here, I don't even know what you're talking about.
So we know that inflammation on the outside, what it looks like.
Yes.
Right? That's what I was just referring to.
Yes.
But there's inflammation on the inside.
Oh.
And it's silent inflammation. If your brain's inflamed, it doesn't get red and swollen, but you get depressed and you have ADD and you have personality issues and you can't sleep and you're anxious, right?
Oh.
So we're now understanding that the inflammation, this hidden inflammation, is occurring inside of us, and it's leading to all the diseases of Western civilization: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia. The aging process itself is called inflammaging, which is one of the hallmarks of aging I talk about in Young Forever in my book. And the beautiful thing is that we now know what is driving the inflammation on the inside.
What's causing us to have inflammation on the inside?
Our gut is a big player.
Okay.
70% of our immune system's in our gut. And if we don't eat the right food, if our microbiome isn't the right bugs in there, they're nasty bugs. And we get leaky gut. And that means the body can't filter out the food and proteins from food and the bacteria in there, and you leak them across the intestinal lining, and guess what? Your immune system's right there, and it goes, holy shit, what is all this? And starts creating inflammation. So you get asthma, or you get arthritis, or you get depression, or you get diabetes, or you get dementia, because the gut bacteria and the whole system in there is broken down.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Because I think this is really important for everybody to understand. Let's back up a minute and talk about how your gut is supposed to function. So when it's functioning in the correct way, because I only learned about leaky gut because we had a daughter that struggled with disordered eating.
Yeah.
And she was constantly talking about how she felt fat. And I thought, oh my God, we have not only this issue with restriction and her not eating, but we now have body dysmorphia. And we went to see a nutritionist that was a functional, holistic nutritionist. And she came back and said, through the disordered eating, your daughter has destroyed
her gut.
Yeah. There are no positive bacteria strains. Yeah. So the food hits her gut.
Yeah.
And without positive bacteria strains, the food doesn't break down.
Yeah.
And so she does feel bloated. And then like all of this acidic crap, because the food is not digesting properly because there's no positive bacteria, all this acidic crap leaks through the wall of the gut and then goes through the nervous system, and the anxiety spikes. So this was brand new to me.
Yeah.
So can you just explain to everybody, when your gut is in balance, how is it functioning properly? Because I think that'll give everybody the ability to then understand the impact of it not functioning properly.
Well, I mean, you pretty much shouldn't know it's there. It should do its job, right? You shouldn't be bloated, distended. You shouldn't have heartburn. You shouldn't have gas. You should feel fine.
Really? People go through life without all that?
I mean, you can have a little gas, but it's not like, that's kind of a normal thing. But I think, if people are really noticing their gut function,
yes,
something's wrong.
Okay.
And then you just look in the toilet. You should have a perfectly formed log. It just floats a little bit. And that's it. And you should feel the urge to go, and you should go, and it should take a couple minutes, and that's it. And that is not the case for most people in Western civilization. There was a guy named Dennis Burkitt who studied people in Africa, and he was looking at the hunter-gatherers who'd moved to the cities and the differences in the health outcomes in these two different populations between the hunter-gatherers and the city dwellers, who were the same genetically. And he found that the city dwellers had lots of heart disease and autoimmune disease and diabetes and all these Western diseases, whereas the hunter-gatherers had none. And what he noticed was that the hunter-gatherer stool weight, their size of their poop, was 2 pounds a day. The city dwellers was 4 ounces.
What?
Yeah, because of all the fiber and all the plant foods they were eating that fed the good bugs in their gut.
Meaning the people that were hunter-gatherers had a better
diet.
Yeah, and I would also imagine, and we're going to get into this, that the stressors of living in the city and the stressors of that kind of life also impacted the body functioning.
Totally. I mean, totally. And there's many pathways through which this works, but the gut or the microbiome is a huge factor. So we know now how to identify imbalances in there. We know how to test for it. We know how to treat it. Not most traditional doctors, but most functional medicine doctors, this is the focus of a lot of the way we help people, is by optimizing their gut function. So that's a big cause of inflammation. The other big cause, and this is also was mediated through the gut, which is our diet. Because when we eat, we're not just feeding us. We're feeding the 1,000 critters that live down there. There's probably 10 trillion cells in there that we're feeding.
In your gut.
In your gut. And many cells of your own body. There's probably 100 times as much DNA as your own body. And probably half the metabolites in your blood come from the bacteria, not from you. And they affect everything that's going on. And if they're the bad guys, you're going to feel bad. And if they're the good guys, you're going to feel good. And so when you eat sugar and starch and processed food and artificial sweeteners and thickeners and gums and additives, they just destroy the microbiome. Plus, pesticides and glyphosate and all this stuff just kills it. And so we really have a gut crisis in this country, but we also have the food crisis. And the food crisis is really what's driving it. And I think if people understand how powerful food is, they don't really have to listen to me. I mean, you can listen to this podcast, you can listen to a million other podcasts. Just for 10 days, change your diet and see what happens. not for a year or 10 years, but 10 days. Anybody can do anything for 10 days. And when you do that, you literally take away all the potential inflammatory foods, all the foods that are causing you to have issues, which is typically gluten, dairy, sugar, processed
So what
foods.
is the 10-day? Like, just give us simple rules that you want everybody listening to try. This is a dare.
Let's go through a sample menu for a day, but it's basically protein and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and berries. And so you
hold on. You said that very fast. Protein,
vegetables, nuts and seeds, and berries,
and
lots of good fats, olive oil, avocados. Okay. So it's basically breakfast could be, for example, a couple of eggs with sliced tomatoes and avocado with olive oil on top. Lunch could be a big salad with lots of different veggies and tomatoes. I could throw a can of wild salmon on there.
Yep.
Put in some pumpkin seeds, just lots of good plant
Very
food.
colorful.
Very colorful. And dinner might be, some a big piece of fish or chicken or a nice small piece of meat with 3/4 of your plate should be vegetables. So
3/4 of your plate.
So like
everybody.
I'll have like the other night I had like a purple sweet potato. I had some roasted mushrooms. I had, I can totally have like a roasted eggplant, whatever you kind of get excited about. Broccolini, I make cruciferous vegetables every day. These are the broccoli.
What did
family.
you say?
Cruciferous vegetables.
What the hell were cruciferous?
Broccoli, basically. The broccoli
what does
family.
cruciferous mean?
It means broccoli, basically. Broccoli, collards, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, all those.
The fibery crap your grandmother served. Is that what you're saying?
It's this family of vegetables. It's a super family.
Got it.
Because it actually detoxes your cells. It helps prevent cancer.
Wow.
It boosts all the detox hormones molecules in your body.
So I want to stop you real quick because you posted something 2 days ago.
I did. What?
That was I'd never really thought about it this way. And it was, you'll probably say it better than me, but it was a very simple post that was like, your cells, your brain cells, like all of this stuff, your skin, that all is continuing to grow. It doesn't just grow out of thin air. It actually is impacted and grows from the raw materials that you give it. And so would you rather have cells that are made from a bag of Doritos?
Exactly.
Or cells made from a salad or a piece of fish? And when you boil it down that way, like, holy cow, what I put in my mouth is what I become.
Yeah, absolutely. You literally become what you eat. I mean, I just had someone on my podcast, the Doctor's Pharmacy, talking about the difference between, for example, pasture-raised bison and bison that were fed corn and feedlot bison, which are still better than
cows. And what
lab
bison?
Feedlot bison, meaning grown on a factory farm.
Okay, got it.
And they measured 15 different 100 metabolites, and what they found was so different among the same genetically identical bison. One had all these incredible molecules that come from plants because it was eating all these grasses. It had different fatty acids. It had different vitamins in it and different minerals in it. And it was just so profound. So you are what you eat, but you also are whichever you're eating, right? And the whole thing goes up the chain. And we really have to get how powerful food is. And do an experiment. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Mel. Listen to your own body. Your body's the smartest doctor in the room. It'll tell you what works and what doesn't. And when you stop this or that, you go, well, God, wait a minute. My joints don't hurt. Or wait a minute. I'm not having terrible reflux or heartburn anymore. Or I don't have migraines. What happened? Or my mood is better. What's going on? It's what you're eating.
Wow. What are the top things that people should, in this kind of 10-day window, stop eating?
I mean, anything that comes in a package, basically, if it's canned, sardines or salmon, that's fine. But basically anything that comes in a package, can, or a box, get rid of it. If it's sugar, no. If sugar-sweetened beverages, no. Alcohol, no. And I sound like I'm a food Nazi, but what I'm saying is get rid of grains and beans for a short time, because a lot of people have inflammation from that if they have a gut issue. Grains and beans are healthy and they're good for you, but for some people they can be a problem, right? It's just like peanuts are good for people, but if some people...
Well, what's the universal one? It's no gluten.
No gluten, no sugar, no dairy, no alcohol, no processed food.
Do you have any fun?
Absolutely. I have so much fun. I have so much fun every day.
I'm just kidding.
My whole life is fun. And I don't feel restricted. I don't starve myself. And the thing is, these foods are addictive, Mel. So people think, I gotta have, well, sugar. Well, can I have artificial? I know what people are listening, thinking about. They're thinking, oh, Dr. Hyman, can I have artificial sweeteners? Or can I have,
yes,
stevia?
Stevia.
Or can I have,
is stevia okay?
Everybody's going it through their head. And if you
Yes.
were having this inner dialogue right now, I guarantee you have biological addiction to sugar because you're trying to find a way out. I'm going to stop smoking, but I'm going to vape, or I'm going to chew Nicorette gum. Well, that's not getting rid of your addiction.
Yes.
Right? And I think it's not your fault. And this is probably one of the biggest problems I have with the narrative in America, that we are blaming the person who's overweight for their problem. It's your fault that you're eating too much and not exercising enough, because that's the solution to weight loss. It's all about calories in, calories out. It's all about moderation. And if you can't do it, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
That's just a big, fat lie. And that keeps people feeling ashamed about themselves. It keeps them from being empowered to know what to do. It keeps the food industry free of responsibility. And it's one of the most unfortunate narratives that we have. And then we get this whole body positive movement. And I think it's important for people to feel good about themselves.
Yes.
But the whole idea of healthy at any weight, there are some for sure that are healthy when they're a bigger size. But the truth is, when you look at the biology of it, only 6.8% of Americans are metabolically healthy. Meaning that means do they have normal blood sugar, cholesterol, blood pressure, they're not overweight, and they don't have heart disease. Like, that's 6.8% of us. That means 93% of us are somewhere in the spectrum from normal to prediabetes, to diabetes.
And what you're here to say is it's not your fault, because the way that food is manufactured, it is addictive.
Yeah.
And it is screwing up your body chemistry, and it is causing like a whole litany of things that you aren't even thinking, that my diet and the way that processed food is getting metabolized is causing this inflammation that makes my brain not work right, that impacts focus and energy and mood and sleep and all of these things. And all of your work points to the fact that one of the places that all of us can start is by just doing an experiment for 10 days where you stop the dairy, stop the gluten, stop the sugar, and you eat a colorful meal of whole foods and vegetables. 3/4 of the plate is vegetables, and have a protein. There is your homework for 10 days, and report back, everybody, because you've seen over and over and over again that in that small of a window, people have remarkable results.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key, because if people go, this is a long slog, going to take me years, you're not going to want to do it. But if you for a short time reset, it's like, when your computer's just going and some program's hung up and that crazy rainbow ball, which I want to kill, is spinning around, you just restart your computer and then all of a sudden it works. So this is like the restart, and has enormous benefits, because for the first time, people understand what they're doing impacts how they feel.
Yeah. I almost feel like this is like an oil change. We got to get that nasty ass oil out there and glug, 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 get your gut working right. Can we talk about the impact of the gut with anxiety, and what's your recommendation? If somebody struggles with anxiety, what do they need to do to heal their gut, and how will that impact anxiety?
Well, anxiety can be caused from many things, right? From, life stresses, from trauma, from environmental toxins, from your microbiome, from eating too much sugar. I mean, there's a whole list. So functional medicine is about getting to the root cause.
Yep.
And anxiety is a symptom. It's like saying I have a headache, right? Well, did someone hit you in the head with a hammer? Or do you have a migraine? Are you eating gluten? Did you not sleep enough? Did you have a hangover? Do you have a brain tumor? You have an aneurysm. Like, why do you have a headache?
Right.
So anxiety is just like saying I have a headache, or depression is like saying I have a headache.
Okay.
It doesn't mean anything other than what your symptoms are. The question is, what's the cause? And that is what functional medicine is so good about. And so the gut plays a big role. But I really just start with the simple lifestyle practices. Do a 10-day reset. Do some simple movement, take a walk, do some simple mindfulness practices, do your take 5 or high five.
Yeah.
I do take 5, which is 5 breaths 5 times a day. It's simple. Like before you eat every time, before you go to bed, take 5 breaths in, slowly in and out for 5 seconds.
How the hell does that help?
It resets your nervous system, because every time you breathe, you move your diaphragm, and your diaphragm is this place where the vagus nerve goes through. The vagus nerve is your relaxation nerve.
Yeah.
So how do you turn on the automatic parts of your nervous system that you don't usually think about, right? You don't, I'm going to make my heart beat at 62 beats a minute, or I'm going to make sure I have 14 breaths a minute, or your body just knows what to do. That's your nervous system.
You just need to find the switch and flip it.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. So you can actually use your breath to reset your nervous system and to calm everything down and lower adrenaline, lower cortisol, lower all the stress hormones, and reset your system. But it doesn't take a lot.
I want to just come back to something you said in the very beginning. Over and over and over again, you're proving simple ways that your body is designed to heal itself.
Yeah.
So 5 breaths, deep breaths. Walk us through how you do the 5 breaths.
Just go like, take a deep breath in to 5 through your nose and 5 out. Do that 5 times. It's not that hard.
Yeah, but nobody
I just
does
did it once and I feel already.
I feel better too. And again, it's proof that if you do the right input, your body responds.
Yeah, we're just looking out there for a solution. And I think it's like Dorothy in her ruby red slippers. She was running around Oz trying to find a way to get back to Kansas. And the truth is she had her ruby red slippers the whole time. And all she had to do was click her heels 3 times and get home. You know, I think we all are like Dorothy. We have ruby red slippers. We just don't know we have them and we don't know how to click them. And this is really what my work is about. It's what my book, Young Forever, is focused on. How do we activate our healing systems? Whether you're 25 or 75, you can activate these systems and feel better now and put yourself on the track for a longer, healthier life.
Wow. Let's talk about ADHD. And
what'd you say?
ADHD.
What?
Okay. I even fell for that. That was good. Let's talk about ADHD.
What were we talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about ADHD and the gut. How is healing your gut?
Oh God!
Helping with ADHD.
I got to tell you a story.
Tell me a story.
It was one of the books that I wrote, The Ultramind Solution, that had this kid's story. And it was what really got me on this track of thinking about writing this book. It was a 12-year-old kid who had severe ADHD when he was younger. It was in kindergarten on Adderall and kicked out of kindergarten. I mean, who gets kicked out of kindergarten?
Wow.
And just struggling at 12 years old. His mother was at her wit's end and, you know, some behavior problems and just struggling. And the mother brought him in and I did a full evaluation because I don't just say, tell me about your ADHD. I said, tell me about your bowel movements. Tell me about what's happening with this and that and the other thing. And it turned out he had asthma, he had irritable bowel syndrome, he had headaches at night, he had muscle cramps, he had anal itching, which is a clue about something.
Oh, okay.
It's often a sign of yeast issues or.
Oh.
Yeah. So he had all these problems. And he was on 7 different medications from multiple different doctors, on asthma medications, on gut medications, on ADD medications, on mood medications. I mean, it was a mess. And his mother brought his handwriting in to show me before, and we can post this on your show notes, before and I started treating him, and then 2 months later after. And all we did was clean up his diet. Kid was living on junk food, never ate a vegetable in his life, massively nutritionally deficient. He was deficient in magnesium, which caused muscle cramps. He was deficient in zinc because he didn't ever eat any pumpkin seeds or vegetables. He had and his immune system was dysregulated. He had also B vitamin deficiencies. He was having gut issues with bad bacteria. He had gluten sensitivity. He had yeast overgrowth. He had a little bit of lead in his system.
Wow.
All this stuff that was really easy to treat. All I did was basically take out the bad food, put in a whole foods diet, a little bit of an elimination that we talked about. I gave him basic multivitamins, some fish oil, magnesium, and vitamin D, some probiotics, kind of reset his gut. And the mother brings him back 2 months later, and she says, not only is his ADD gone, but all of his other symptoms are gone. His migraines, his irritable bowel, his asthma, his skin issues, his anal itching, it's all gone. Congestion, sinus issues, all gone. And his handwriting went from totally illegible, these kids with really bad penmanship, to perfectly legible, perfect penmanship. And I didn't send him to a handwriting school. All I did was fix his brain by fixing his body, by fixing his gut.
I'm processing this.
Yeah, it's a lot.
No. I'm processing this because I have a visual to share with you listening to us. And then I want to tell a quick story because I'm starting to feel like ding, 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 ding with our own son. Mm-hmm. So the visual I want to give everybody, because it just hit me, is when somebody has an allergic reaction, like they get stung by a bee, or they eat something that they're allergic to and their face turns bright red, or, you know, something swells on their body. That inflammation that you're seeing on the outside is the body reacting to something that it can't process.
Or that it
correct?
doesn't like.
Can you describe what an allergic reaction means medically? Because I then want to tie it to something that I'm now thinking about when it comes to the gut. So what does it mean when you have an allergic reaction? You have allergies.
Yeah. I mean, there's really two main kind of allergies.
Okay.
One is a true allergy. So if you eat peanuts,
right,
your tongue swells up, your lungs shut down, you can't breathe, and you can die.
Correct.
You get anaphylaxis. That's a life-threatening emergency. A bee sting allergy, that's a certain type we call type 1 allergy, which is super fast, super quick, and you can die from it.
EpiPen people.
Yes, EpiPen people, right? Then there's the delayed sensitivity. It's not a true allergy, but it can create sort of low-grade long-term symptoms. Okay. So if you eat bread, you might have brain fog. Is that a true allergy? No. But is it sensitivity? Yes.
Yes.
Right? And I think people don't have, I mean, I know, for example, if I eat dairy that's from a regular feedlot cow, I will get congestion and snotty immediately, and I'll probably get pimples the next day.
Yep.
But if I have, for example, sheep or goat products that are from regenerative sheep that have A2 casein, which is non-inflammatory, then I don't, right? So it's really not so much about the type 1 we're so much worried about. It's all these other types of food reactions that are slow and delayed and create this low-grade inflammation that creates all these symptoms for people.
Yes. So I wanted to bring that visual in for everybody because I think it's really helpful. You know, when for me personally, I don't know if it's the dyslexia. I just don't know if it's because I'm a visual learner. I love to have something I can think about visually to help me process large amounts of information. And so when I think about my husband, for example, who's allergic to bees, he has an EpiPen. I wish he would carry it around a little bit more. But when he gets stung with a bee, it's not life-threatening, but it's scary.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me a couple of years ago, I wonder if, like, these sensitivities and these allergies that people have to food that may not cause swelling or redness in your face or breakouts or whatever that you can't see, I wonder if all of this is screwing up the way that our body is able to function.
Absolutely.
And it interferes with your body's way to function. And so when you think about it like those kind of type 1 ones that, and you just explained it, like if you have a sensitivity to wheat or your body just can't handle the big company manufactured foods because of the chemicals and the dyes and the crap that are in it, it is causing your whole body to have almost like this reaction,
smoldering inflammation.
this smoldering inflammation, just like a bee sting causes Chris's face to blow up. And so when you think about it that way, it makes so much sense to go, holy cow. If you just simply were to switch your diet from all this processed crap, grab and go, and you were to put on your plate a little bit of protein and 3/4 vegetables, it would probably calm your body down and your thoughts down. And here's what I'm going, holy fuck, this is crazy. Because our son, exactly what you're talking about, Oakley in 4th grade was diagnosed with severe dyslexia. The kid could not read. He was so like blah-bitty-blah-bitty-blah that he literally snowed everybody for about a year. And then they got to the point where you can't just raise your hand first and make something up, and that makes people think that you read it. And the math problems are getting harder, so you can't. So the gig was up. Cannot read. It looked, honest to God, like he was writing with his feet. His dysgraphia was so bad.
Exactly.
He could not sit still. So we pull him out of public school. We put him in the Carroll School outside of Boston. Fortunate enough to get him in there only about language-based learning. And they immediately medicate him for ADHD. He hated the meds. But it was the only way he could sit still in class. Fast forward to about 8th grade. He starts advocating for himself. I'm not eating meds. I'm not taking these meds. I'm not taking these meds. I'm not taking these meds. We're like, fine. But if we get a report from school that you are bouncing around the classroom and you can't sit still, we're going to have to find a different solution. This school happened to have a cafeteria where all the kids ate, and it had a whole like food
healthy options. Like there were no unhealthy options. There was the salad bar, there was the homemade soup, there was a protein. He gets into 9th grade. When I tell you this kid is a totally different person.
Yeah.
His handwriting is different. That's what made me think of this.
Yeah.
His ability to focus is different. He has not been on meds now for 3 years.
Yeah.
You would not know that this kid had severe dyslexia.
No.
He is just, I don't even know who he is. It's like destroying it in school. He is present.
Yeah.
And he eats vegetables.
Yeah.
Like he has a totally different diet.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting here going, holy shit. Like the kid used to eat mac and cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Chicken nuggets.
That'll do it.
Don't put a vegetable on my plate.
That'll do it. Yeah, it's really true. And it's like...
And I'm just processing this because I'm like, I think this is a major part of why he is transformed.
And Mel, it's not just ADD. Everything that goes on in our brain above our neck is governed in the same way. We may not have such severe symptoms. We may not have asthma. We may not have severe ADD, but we may have fatigue or brain fog or just, depression or anxiety.
Well, let's talk about depression.
Right?
If you can't afford to go to somebody in functional medicine to get this all tested, how do you figure out what's going on? You have in your new book, Young Forever, you have all of these self-assessments that you can do.
Yeah.
But do you have to have testing at some point, or is there a way for you to
get testing?
Have an accessible way?
Yeah.
Because one of the things, I agree with you. I agree with you that our medical approach and the medical system is about treating illness versus keeping you healthy and whole. I agree that we treat symptoms, but we have a hard time getting to the root cause.
I agree.
So I just want to, because I know that what's going to happen with this conversation, Dr. Hyman, is that we are going to activate anyone listening to absolutely take the next 10 days of your life and see what happens when you reset your diet and you remove a few things. Absolutely add in those simple supplements that cost you less than $1 a day, and you are worth that investment in yourself, and see what happens. Absolutely take the steps to lower your stress and tap into your body's ability to reset, like even just the 5 deep breaths a day that activate and tone the vagus nerve. But if somebody's going, I want to learn more, what is the next right step?
That's a great question. And one of the challenges I've always had with medicine is it's kind of a secret guild, and doctors hold the reins. They can order the tests or they can't. They will give you the results or they won't. They'll help you interpret them or they won't. And so you're at the sort of whim and mercy of whoever you're seeing. And most doctors do a good job and want to help people, but it kind of kept in a guild. So in the book, Young Forever, I do have really extensive questionnaires that allow you to figure out almost 80% of what's going on.
Yep.
And then depending on what you find in those, you can kind of follow up with different kinds of testing. But because of this problem, exactly that you're talking about, I decided to co-found a company with a good friend called Function Health, which allows you, without a doctor's order, to go to any Quest lab in the country, and there's thousands of them, get a blood draw of over 100 biomarkers that normally cost $15,000 for $500.
Wow.
And it comes with a whole interpretive map and framework and dashboard that's filtered through the lens of functional medicine that I wrote that allows people to not have to go see the doctor and still do 80% of. Or
why the hell did I go to your clinic then if I could have just done this, Dr. Hyman? Burying the lead. No, I'm just kidding. I am just kidding, everybody. I do want to say something that I was able to go to the medical center right here in this tiny town of Manchester, Vermont, and have blood drawn for those tests.
Yeah, right.
And so you don't have to go to your primary care. You don't have to go. All of the minute clinics that are popping up are places where you can go if you're going to do those things to order the blood draws.
Well, the thing is, you have to usually get a doctor's order. So the beautiful thing about Function Health, this company that we created, was that you don't need a doctor's order. So you can go to the website, sign up, and they'll network with over 50 different states, doctors in every one, where you can just go and get kind of
the testing done.
Yeah, get the testing done, get your results, and track it over time, and you can see your hormones, your thyroid, your insulin, your age-related markers, your brain chemistry, so much about what's going on with your body.
You know what's so cool about this, if you can afford to do it, and we'll put the link in the show notes, is it's like getting an X-ray.
of your insides.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've proven to us that you heal from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I'm so excited about this approach because it empowers people to be the CEO of their own health. And the reality is that, you know, even if you go to the doctor with all these complaints, they're going to be able to, quote, manage your symptoms. I don't want to manage people's symptoms. I want people to get better. I want people to reverse these problems and not need a doctor. And the truth is, most of the things that work are not things you're going to get at a doctor's office, which is drugs and surgery. So sometimes you need them, and I use them. That's not a bad thing. But most of the problems we have don't respond very well to that. And all these things that we talk about, whether it's depression. I mean, antidepressants just suck. They don't work that well. They have all these side effects. And anxiety medications are highly addictive. I mean, they just cover over the symptoms. What if you could actually figure out why you're having the problem and fix it?
Well, I think you told us why. It's inflammation. It's a gut that's out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
It is the stressors in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It is the toxins in your environment. And not understanding that your body has this elegant design that is super intelligent and responsive and can heal itself if you are conscious and intentional about the right input.
Yeah. And that's what's exciting that's happening now in science is we're actually getting there. Like the old paradigm's dying. And in the longevity space that I've been working in, and when I wrote about it in Young Forever, where these scientists are now talking about what's underlying all these diseases, these 155,000 diseases, that's not what we need to be thinking about. It's these 10 underlying problems that tend to go wrong as we get older that can explain all disease. And if we treat those, we may not be able to just extend our life by 5 years by getting rid of cancer or heart disease, but by 30 or 40 years. That means living to be 120 and being in good shape. Like, I don't want to live to be 120 in a nursing home in a wheelchair. I want to be able to ride my bike, go for a horseback ride, make love. You know, that's what I want to do when I'm 100 or 120.
Wow. I'm glad that you said that because oftentimes I hear the word longevity and I had that reaction like, well, I don't want to be rotting away in a nursing home at
exactly.
Like 125. That sounds terrible.
It's terrible because most of what we see, Mel, in the world is abnormal aging. And we think that's normal. Oh, it's normal to become frail and decrepit and not be able to do what you want and lose function. And the truth is that most of us, our health span doesn't equal our lifespan. The last 20 years of our life.
What's the difference between health span and lifespan?
Well, health span is how many years you're healthy and you can do what you want. And lifespan is how many years you're alive. So if you're fine until you're 60, then you get dementia in your nursing home for 20 years. That's not good. So that's what you want to do is make your health span equal your lifespan. So on my last day, I want to go for a hike with my beloved. I want to come home, make a delicious dinner. I want to have a bottle of wine, probably a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and
wait a minute, that wasn't on the diet.
Who cares? I'm 120, and then I make love, and I close my eyes and drift off, and maybe take a jump in the pond.
That sounds incredible. You know, my mother-in-law is 85 years old. She jumps out of airplanes. She walks 5 miles a day.
There you go.
She's having the time of her life. When Chris and I went alcohol free for a bit, she's like, I'm not doing that. Like I have my 1 glass of red wine a day. That's what I need. She plays cards. She prioritizes friends.
Yeah, exactly.
She is the definition of vitality at that age.
Yeah.
And she's like the Energizer Bunny. I can't imagine her running out of steam. And that's what I think you're talking about when it comes to vitality. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.